Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started.
Hi, Angela.
The board met here early because we had an executive session, so I do need a motion to adjourn out of our business meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we are adjourned. No, we don't have to vote to adjourn. So, at least what I read in Robert's rules. So, once we have the motion and the second, we're done. All righty, welcome everybody this evening. We're going to go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you could stand with us all. And, hey, Dr. Hill, would you kick us off? I gotta keep it mixed up here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag. Texas, we had to do the
Oh, you do the Texas pledge? Oh, no, we're not.
break out and sing the national anthem.
All right. Well, thank you
There's a separate Texas one.
for kicking us off on that.
Why would I even ask?
All righty, next we have Director Jones, who is going to do the recognition for Black History Month.
Whereas the origin of Black History Month began in 1915, half a century after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States. The month of recognition grew out of the Negro History Week, first started by historian Carter G. Woodson and other prominent African Americans. And whereas in 1976, the week-long celebration was extended to the entire month of February to honor and recognize the achievements and contributions of the central role of African Americans in United States history. And whereas National Black History Month is a time for all Americans to remember and honor African Americans' history, teachings, suffering, and strength, which gave a voice to the struggle of freedom, equality, access, and opportunity. And whereas the contributions of African Americans from all walks of life and all fields reflect the greatness of the United States. African American citizens have participated and continue to participate in every American effort to secure, protect, and maintain the essence and substance of American democracy. And whereas not only during the during the month of February 2023, but throughout the remainder of the year, it is important that we, as a district, continue to build awareness and understanding of African American history and emphasize the importance of valuing differences within our own school district. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Mesa County Valley School District Board of Education does hereby recognize February 2023 as Black History Month, and it be further resolved that Mesa County Valley School District Board of Education encourages all citizens to participate in various schools and community activities that highlight Black history in February and throughout the year.
All right, next we have Dr. Schultes recognizing National Counseling Week.
National School Counseling Week is this week, February 6th through the 10th, 2023. It's a time to recognize the unique contributions of school counselors in the U.S. school system and focus public education on their hard work and dedication to a challenging yet rewarding profession. National School Counseling Week highlights the tremendous impact school counselors can have in helping students achieve school success and plan for a career. This year, the theme of National School Counseling Week is helping students dream big, and that's precisely what our school counselors do. They're highly educated, professionally certified individuals who are actively committed to helping students explore their talents, strengths, abilities, and interests to achieve their greatest potential in both school and life. An integral part of the education system, school counselors help students focus on positive ways to enhance social, personal, educational, and career development. They work in partnership with parents as they encounter the challenges of raising children in today's world. And they work with teachers and other educators to provide an educational system where students maximize their potential and set healthy, realistic, and optimistic views. We want to take this opportunity to recognize and thank all District 51 school counselors. You are integral to our students' success and are not thanked nearly enough for all that you do. Thank you.
All right, thank you both very much. Next, we have Mount Garfield Middle School International Baccalaureate Middle School Years Program Presentation. If you need to grab an extra chair, you can pull one up.
Hello? No, no, it's good. Hello? Oh, here we go. Okay. Good evening. Don't start it yet. And I'll be like here 3 times, 4 times. And I'm with MedVed, you can turn it on, but good evening. This evening, I've got the Mount Garfield team here, admin team, and Dan Bennell, the site director, and I'll have them introduce themselves. Tonight, we're gonna talk through the Mount Garfield IB MYP journey. They are requesting that they extend the IB MYP path that we have in our school district, and they're gonna talk about the process that they have been going through and what they've done, and then I will finish up at the end on what their next steps are. But because they're looking to expand, we asked them and let them know that they needed to present to the board. So with that, and I'll click for you, I'm gonna give you the microphone to Nikki Johnston. And then you can introduce everybody. Okay,
Hello, I'm Nikki Johnston. I'm the principal at Mount Garfield Middle School. With me today is our assistant principal, Sally Huddle, assistant principal, Danielle Bagwell, and our instructional coach and MYP coordinator, Rachel Brown. So we're going to start going through how the middle years program aligns to the District 51 strategic plan. The Middle Years program is an international baccalaureate program that encourages students grades 6 to 10 to make connections between their studies and the real world, preparing them for success in future study and in life. This program very closely aligns with our strategic plan. Let's begin with robust and aligned option for learning experience. Currently, we have pockets of aligned options for learners, such as STEAM and STEM at Topin Central, as well as dual language at DIA and Bookcliff. Palisade High School currently has the middle years program as well as the diploma program. Unlike the diploma program, which requires specialized coursework, the middle years program is for all students. All students who attend Mount Garfield Middle School and 9th and 10th grade at Palisade High School are MYP students and benefit from this program. Mount Garfield Middle School will develop an acceptance program similar to the one used at Palisade High School to allow students from outside of our boundaries who would like to benefit from this program. Now let's look at academic success. This is the middle years program model. This graphic shows the layers that surround an MYP learner. Notice that the closest layer includes the approaches to learning, which is also called ATLs, global context, approaches to teaching, the ATTs, as well as concepts. These are closest to the student and symbolize their importance. At the center is the students, and the teachers drive towards the middle with their content. We approach learning through the ATLs and the ATTs. Students are learning all of the same concepts. How we, as the teachers, approach those concepts is what's different. Sorry, that's hard to see, but. So what is the middle years program? It is a framework that complements and lifts our current resources, curriculums, and state standards. It challenges students intellectually as well as asks students to look at traditional subjects through the lens of global concepts, transferability, and real-world application. It is still developed around the ATLs, which we will explain shortly, global engagement, and subject transferability. The MYP program is based on research and years of success around building students' academic confidence, the connection to a larger world, and developing an understanding of global context. How does the IB Middle Years program help with student wellness? The approaches to learning, which are ATLs, as you see up here, are the skills that are explicitly taught and integrated into each and every subject. ATL skills help students prepare for and demonstrate learning. They provide a common language that students and teachers can use to reflect on and articulate the process of learning. Teachers can use key and related concepts along with global context as vehicles for teaching effective learning strategies. Likewise, the approaches to teaching can be a powerful tool for exploring significant concept. This dual focus, which is content and process, promotes student engagement, deep understanding, transfer of skills, and academic success. The focus of approaches to learning in the MYP helps students to develop self-knowledge and skills they need to enjoy a lifetime of learning. The IB Learner Profile represents 10 attributes valued by the IB learner. They imply the commitment to help all members of the school community learn to respect themselves and others around the world. As an IB learner, we strive to be inquirers, knowledgeable, thinkers, communicators, principled, open-minded, caring, risk-takers, balanced, and reflective. This is what we all strive for in our learning. So now a little background about Mount Garfield Middle School. Mount Garfield Middle School and our teachers have worked hard over the last 5 years to build a culture of belonging, engagement, and academic success. As the largest middle school in the Valley, we serve many of our most at-risk students. We also continue to have stability within our student population over the last 5 years. With these challenges, we have also led the district in growth in math and ELA for 2 years, and last year we had the highest proficiency in reading as measured by CMAS. This is just the beginning of the potential that Mount Garfield teachers and students can achieve. For the last 3 years, we have been doing an MYP Light curriculum, not fully implementing the program. So this is our MYP journey. In the fall of 2018, we had a new staff and new administration team, and we began talking about how to best address our student needs. Over the next 2 years, we spent time talking with Palisade High School and district admin to discuss the possibility of becoming an MYP school. We took our first consensus vote in March of 2020 and planned to send teachers to the first MYP conference in May. Then, of course, COVID-19 hit and put a pause on our journey. During the next 3 years, we continued to send teachers to MYP training, as well as working on unit plans and policies that we will need to have developed. With the reconstruction of district administration, the new superintendent and new board, we wanted to revisit our implementation. Mount Garfield has had some staffing changes since our last vote, so we invited Palisade High School back, we redid a gallery walk, and did another consensus vote. So this was our consensus process. We repeated the same process that we did before. We had some teachers and admin from Palisade come down to answer questions regarding MYP and the process. We did a gallery walk to look at some of the components of MYP, as well as some of the items we would need to complete. Teachers then took a survey to show support or not. They were asked 3 questions. I am in support of MYP and want to move forward with the framework for MGMS. I support moving forward but still have some questions. And the last one was I do not support MYP but understand we will be moving forward with unit plans, common assessments, looking at student data, and building LCs as led by the district. This time the results were 100% in favor. We had 93% who were all in and 7% that supported it but had questions. Those questions were around how to train new teachers, what the timeline looked like, and specifically what candidacy looked like. So here are some of the things that we did on our gallery walk. We talked a lot about a lot of the same things that we're discussing here. So this is the process that we will be going through if we are allowed to be an MYP school. This April 2023, we would request candidacy. That approval would happen through IB before the beginning of the 2023-24 school year. During the 23-24 school year, we would have IB consultants coming out to look at our processes and our structures and giving suggestions for improvement. Then we would make the formal request for authorization sometime in the middle of 2024-25. Then IB does 2 authorization visits during the 25-26 school year, with our official authorization coming at the end of the 25-26 school year. This is a process that is repeated throughout your time as an IB school, and we are very lucky to have Palisade High School who has been through the process for MYP, and also for the IB program. Sorry, the diploma program. So what will the cost be? IB charges a yearly fee of $10,050. This fee covers the cost of processing, reviewing and reporting the application, and authorization, as well as 20 hours of remote consultancy, 1 2-day consultancy visit per candidacy, a report, an end of consultancy report, and then another 2-day verification for candidacy. This also includes all of the program resources, direct support from IB, as well as use of the logo, names, and access to the IB World School Association. We would also need an FTE for a full-time MYP coordinator, as well as a Spanish teacher, a Spanish resource, and some money to continue professional development.
All right, so just one last piece, and then I'm going to ask you, you'll be able, the opportunity to ask questions. How have they paid for it so far? And Nikki can talk about that a little bit, but that they've been using their title dollars to do that. And I believe they've been using, Palisade has been bringing some of their teachers when they went to training. So what does the process look like now? We don't want to rely solely or only on our title dollars when we want to do something innovative or continue to work on our strategic plan by offering more options. The consensus process that you saw them, that Nikki shared that they went through, it's actually part of our agreement with our MVEA, and it's a consensus process anytime you want to start something new. So they followed, I just wanted to highlight and lift that, they followed the process, ensuring that they had communicated and had buy-in from their staff. And as you can see, they had some pretty good buy-in. So what happens next? They've already met with our human resource to make sure that it seemed plausible or doable, the additional staff that they're asking. Then we also met with finance, and Mel reviewed it to make sure that it met standards and it wasn't too big or too small, and were they thinking the right way? And yes, it passed that. The next is the board presentation. They still will need to go through the budget request process. Unfortunately, as we all know, you all know so well, we don't have an endless supply of money, and we will have to prioritize, and there still is the budget process request that they will need to go through before they are able to start or given the go-ahead to start in August. So with that, I'm going to give the microphone back. Is there anything that you want to say? Dan, you've been the site director and supporting them for the last couple years, so.
Yeah, I would just add, when you think about a fit and this particular school, I think you have to think about its feeder pattern, which this school directly feeds into Palisade High School, and obviously Palisade High School with the IB program, DP, and now how they've transitioned and expanded through MYP. This is just really that, it furthers that next step, which then allows really the MYP to get started at an earlier age. And so a lot of those skills and concepts that you saw in the presentation will be started and have been really in a light version started already at Mount Garfield, but it really sets the foundation for those kids then transitioning naturally into the MYP program with the opportunity to move into the DP program over at Palisade High School. So obviously as a feeder, it does make a lot of sense, and I know we've talked about it for several years. With eventually, I mean, it's set up very nicely for eventually down the road. They have a primary years program too, so it really, that's down the road, but as we think about those robust options for kids within our district, it would make sense that whether it's now, we hope, or later, this would be a natural step in that process.
Do you guys want to add anything?
Questions?
Hi, thank you. So there is no current Spanish teacher. The Spanish teacher would be new. And then the MYP coordinator, so even though we're extending the program, there isn't one right now?
So right now, Rachel is half-time an MYP coordinator and half-time an instructional coach.
Okay.
So she has a dual role right now, and it's been hard for her to do both. So,
And you've been using
title funds. And we've been, yeah, and we used our title funds to have her be our MYP coordinator.
Okay. And with our algorithms for student staffing, is there a full-time instructional coach need, or is that just a half-time instructional coach need? So if she weren't doing the half-time MYP,
We have another full-time instructional coach.
okay, how would that impact the staffing relative to her position if we got a full-time MYP coordinator? Does that make sense?
Yes, it would mean that we would be down a half-time instructional coach.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, I'm jumping to step 56. Well, I'm not, but people will, so I want to. I just know that 50, there's 57, figure 50. So you mentioned, just like Palisade, right, it's open to students across the valley, right? You already mentioned largest middle school. So just logistically, like what enrollment are you looking at? I mean, I know that's many steps down the road, but I'm sure you've thought about that. Would it be similar to what goes on at the Challenge School, or so kids are going to enroll or apply type thing?
Yeah, so we would do an application process, and after looking at our numbers and where our numbers might be in the future, it looks like we should be able to take about 30 kids per grade level. So we'd start at 6th grade, we'd accept 30 more kids, then we would, accept 30 more and backfill if anybody left.
But the program here is for all the kids at Mount Garfield, so this
Yes.
would be in addition to, it's not a separate, like
Nope.
Palisade, it's a separate.
Correct, it is, it's the same.
This is for everybody, so this is
Everyone.
just opening up for maybe 30-something extra kids
Yes.
that would, okay. Is that 56, or is that an earlier number?
I think that's earlier.
Is it?
Yeah, you might be 30-ish.
Yeah.
Still a ways to go.
Yeah.
But you've thought about that, that's good, okay.
I think along those lines, Doug, I was thinking the same thing with enrollment. So I'm guessing you've also chatted with Palisade to make sure that we don't have all these kids that go through the middle years program and then we can't get them into Palisade if that's, so I'm guessing you've had that discussion or you've anticipated what that funnel is going to look like into Palisade?
I'll add, yes.
Okay.
I think a key distinction is that the diploma program is for a select student application process. The middle years program is for all students. So as long as all students can feed into Palisade, it's a pedagogical shift rather than a curriculum shift for the MYP program. Whereas the diploma program comes with curriculum, what you're teaching students. So that Palisade can still control the number of students that get into the diploma program, and it still is going to be an application process. But the MYP program is a pedagogical shift for teachers. And if you look at that program circle, that program model, it aligns very closely with the District 51 teaching and learning framework. And so I think in reality, whether they end up at Palisade based on their numbers or another building, that learning experience would be rich. And it doesn't mean they have to get into the diploma program.
All right, that's actually leads me into my second question was, is this going to be a curriculum the board would have to approve? But it's not a curriculum, it's a pedagogy. Okay.
Yeah, it's a framework.
Okay.
The only thing that we may need is Spanish. I don't know if we have Spanish middle school. That was on the budget, but, so that would be the only cost in terms of resource, I
So
think.
we would have to come, they would have to come to the board, didn't miss it, to ask approval for the Spanish.
Spanish, okay,
Because we don't have one.
for middle school.
Oh.
Okay. That was my second question, was on the curriculum piece, so, okay. Board, any other questions?
And this is going back to even, I mean, years ago when the, even as we're actually going back in slides, it's hurting my eyes.
Look at me when you say years ago. Really. you
Back in the
em-
day.
you seem to emphasize that.
But there was a request from the board in the past that if we were going to expand programs or bring new programs in, that there was a process for this, so that it wasn't just a school said, today we're going to be this, and then they become that. So this is the process that we are kind of testing out with Mount Garfield Middle School to be able to bring it to the board. Obviously, it's something that we need to make a decision on, but we wanted to make sure the board had a lot of input or question, and get their questions answered before we move forward with it, so that it's something that the board and the district can support moving forward, so that we don't do IB middle years for a couple years and then we go, never mind, we don't really want it. And then this would open up another option for families. I am glad that it's going to be for everybody in the Mount Garfield attendance area. You may have already answered this a while ago, but if I'm a kid who's one of those 30 kids that maybe gets in, I would assume I would still, then when I go to high school, I'd still need to do a school of choice transfer into Palisade, because I'm not zoned for Palisade then, right? Okay.
And I think it would be similar than with Palisade in that it's before the school of choice. So it's like a separate application process, and then the school of choice window happens.
Is that something to, that's a great point Dr. Hill brings up, because if, you have a child who's going to Mount Garfield for those 3 years and they're building relationships with friends and such, those kids are automatically going to Palisade because they're in that attendance area. I don't know, it might be something, and I know we have processes with school of choice, but since this is a specific program, might it make sense if they wanted to be able to continue at Palisade because they'd be in that network, as opposed to now they're going to their home high school, and they, generally probably wouldn't know kids feeding into that. I don't know, have you thought about that?
No, it's a good point. I think it's something to explore, and obviously we'd have some time before that would happen, but because that's what we do with, although it's different grade levels, but if you're in the, let's just use DIA, for example, if you're in the DIA elementary program, you're automatically you're able to go to the middle school program. I think it would come down to, does Palisade have the space to take those extra 30 kids in, and then, and it probably would be something we'd have to bring back to the board. I don't know if that's a policy thing, but those kids can automatically, because you're going to have kids that want a school of choice into Palisade, but they didn't go through the middle years program, so do they get preference over them? Yeah.
Don't we do that, and forgive me for not knowing this 100%, but our kids that go to East in the Challenge program, they feed into Junction. Are those kids, I guess I've thought those kids automatically get to feed in the Junction too? Or do they go back?
Quite a few of them actually end up at
Pardon me?
quite a few of them actually end up at Palisade.
They go through the DP.
Oh.
They go through the
from-
DP
from- That's
program.
true. Gotcha, okay. So there is no automatic they could if they wanted to?
application process. If they happen to get into Palisade, they go to Palisade. If not, they go back into
To their, okay.
to their home school.
So what I'm suggesting would have to almost, if you do it with one, you'd almost have to look at that program as well, I suppose. Anyway. I appreciate you, just, I'm sure I speak for everyone. Like you said, your scores and everything look great, and you could say, hey, we're good to go and stay status quo, but you're looking, how can we do better? How can we work with Palisade? And that's terrific, because I know it's a tremendous amount of extra beyond what you're already doing. So for all of you, that's terrific, I think.
Any other questions? No?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's great.
All right, yes, next we have enrollment and grade configuration update.
And we have.
Online?
Yeah, we have Shannon online. And Shannon, I don't know, are you going to share your screen with the presentation?
I can go either way. I seem to have a good stable connection here, so we could push it. Actually, I'm seeing some latency in my voice. Why don't we use your system to display the slides, and I will grace you with my beautiful face initially, and then I'll just go to voice only if that works.
Okay, you'll just have to tell us when to switch slides. Okay.
Okay.
Do we have his pulled up version? You don't have his? Okay, it's not on here. I think he's gonna have us present.
Dr. Hill, if that's a challenge, we can try mine. I'm in the superintendent's office at Anchorage School District, so I'm hoping this connection is pretty good.
If you want to, that's good. Yeah, so. Just do a PowerPoint, it's probably easier, yeah. Cool, and then if you start, do the president, and then can we show that up there? Shannon, we got it going on our end, Shannon, so you don't have to do that.
Okay.
Is it not gonna be able to see it?
I told my boys, we need to learn how to rake and a shovel.
It's up there.
Oh, very good. There we go. Well, good evening, everyone. It's a privilege to be here. We have just completed a fairly successful stakeholder process, generically addressing various facility issues. And we've received almost 4,000 surveys back, which is remarkable. I was only expecting 400. So thanks to our community relations department for doing such a great job on the push out. So I feel like we were able to get a really credible, adequate response from our stakeholders on 3 issues that we wanted to address. The next slide shows the 2 town halls that we had at Fruita Monument High School and Grand Junction High School. We had approximately 45 people in the room for each event. About 25 of those were community members and the rest were staff. For the Fruita Monument survey on grade configuration in the Fruita Redlands community, we had almost 1,400 surveys that were fully completed. So we had a very strong involvement on the part of the community with the survey. For the overall district-wide survey on our school replacement strategy and the potential school combination strategy, we had 2,342 responses. So again, we've had really good and adequate response to the survey. And I think we probably, based on your direction this evening, could consider pulling the survey down because the percentages and the opinions have held steady for the last 4 or 5 days. And we've also leveled off in the number of responses that we have. On the next slide, I'll just wade right into results. And are you seeing a pie chart on your end? Oops, let's go to that third page. Is there a pie chart on your third page?
Hey, give us 1 second. We'll pull the PDF up.
Very good. Now we can talk about pie. This first slide.
Not a Mac, so I don't know how to use it. Here we go. There.
So the first slide shows the community's response to the district school replacement policy. So this was the district-wide survey. And you can see that 81% of people who participated in the survey either supported or strongly supported the school replacement policy or practice that the district has been involved in for the last 5 to 8 years. We actually mentioned Orchard Mesa Middle School, which was a school replacement, and the current Grand Junction High School project. So we are looking at very strong support for the idea of replacing existing schools on their current sites. As far as the next slide, if you could go to the next slide. This is the concept of combining small programs into larger programs. And on this question, we received 50% of our respondents were either supportive or strongly supportive of that concept. 20% were neither opposed nor in favor of it, and 30% were against. So 50% of those surveyed were in support and 20% did not have an opinion. The next slide shows the analysis of that. You can read that a little bit as you see fit. There were certain areas where there was a little bit more support for various concepts. But I would say that we had a pretty good representation of teachers. We had a pretty good representation. The majority of the people that responded were parents. There was a little bit of differentiation of response, but for the most part, people were pretty universally in favor of school replacement. And the percentage of people who support the idea of combining smaller programs was also consistent from role to role. The next slide shows a little bit of the geographic breakdown and describes people's demographic. I would say that the majority of the people that responded to these surveys were parents. The majority of the respondents were broadly distributed across the district, and there was a pretty even or predictable participation between elementary, middle, and high school, where people who had children in all of those levels of facilities participated. The next slide shows what was the primary role in the school district for most respondents was parents. And then the next slide, I think, shows, this is kind of small on my end, but it shows which grade level. Oh, this is for staff people. And you can see that we had a pretty even mix of people that either worked directly with children as teachers or in some sort of a support role. The next slide shows the results of the FRUTA grade configuration survey. And on this slide, you can see that 70% of respondents supported or strongly supported the concept of grade reconfiguration. And just to be clear, this means exploring the idea of going from the current configuration of K5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 to the standard grade configuration used elsewhere in the district of K5, 6, 8, 9, 12. The next slide shows an isolation of who participated. And you can see that the majority of the respondents were Fruita Monument High School, Fruita 8-9, Fruita Middle School, and Redlands Middle School. So you can see kind of geographically that the affiliations also spilled down into the elementary levels. But a lot of the folks that responded to this were predominantly interested in the secondary issues. The next slide shows the preference for the 9th grade in the high school in isolation, and 74% of respondents were in favor of that. And that preference was stronger in the Redlands. And just to be clear, 9th graders from the Redlands are in the Fruita 8-9 building for 1 year, and then they move to the high school. Whereas the students from Fruita are in the 8-9 building for 2 years before they move to the high school. So there is a little bit of a difference regarding the assignment there that you can draw your own conclusions as to whether that had an impact in the survey data. The next few slides show some of the analytics. You're welcome to read that as you see fit. I think this was provided to you in advance. There you see the issue with there being a slight preference in the Redlands, more support regarding moving the 9th grade to the high school. On the next slide, you'll see the geographic breakdown. This is the question that was, if we did do something and it required creating a 6-8 middle school, would you prefer to have one big 6-8 middle school or two smaller ones? And the response was almost identical. So there's not really enough information out there, I think, for parents to really make a choice on that. So they tended to have almost the same pattern of response on that. Specifically, there was preference for doing it, but how we did it, there was not a clear delineation on whether they would prefer 2 buildings or 1. The next few slides show how the response on those 2 issues, some permutations on that were very subtle. And again, you're welcome to read that as you see fit. The next slide shows, let's see, primary role, meaning parent, teachers, staff, et cetera, in the district for people that responded to this survey. And again, this was 2 separate surveys. So this is why there's a separate demographic section regarding the role of the participants. The next slide shows, I think, a breakdown by level as far as which grades people are affiliated with. This is in a little bit more detail to allow you to see some of the gradations. But for the most part, we're seeing pretty universal support for this idea. The next slide shows for staff people, what is your primary role, et cetera. And then this next slide shows next steps. I guess what we would like to do is just engage in a little bit of a discussion. And these would be the next steps. If you would like me to go to the next level on this, I would begin to do focused stakeholder groups where we would have focus groups addressing grade configuration. So we would be addressing the affected communities, specifically getting real detailed response from those groups. We would also do that on the school condition survey if there are some buildings that are candidates that might be suggested for the master plan process, or we would be looking at eventually replacing further buildings. And then finally, on school combinations, we would be using interviews, instructional and operational staff meetings, and focus groups to evaluate some specific options. And then if you would like to turn this around during the month of February, I could come back to you by February 21st with some preliminary recommendations that you could evaluate, that we would have gone through a significant amount of due process to collect further information for you on a limited set of actions. And we would make sure that we tried to keep everything real specific to real specific schools so that we kind of limited the discussion to just the schools that needed to have a discussion. So that's my presentation. I'd be delighted to respond to any questions or comments at this point, and I'll thank everyone for their attention.
I have a couple of, this is Carrie, I have a couple of really quick, just clarification questions. For each question that says that teachers felt a certain way, I just want to make sure, is that only teachers, or is that below you divided out who worked directly with students and who didn't? Do the teacher respondents, are those just teachers, or are those all employees, some of which don't work with students? Not that it really matters, I just want to understand that.
I think we isolated it to teachers.
Okay, great. And then I have another question that I feel kind of silly asking, but at Fruta 8-9, is the 9th grade way bigger than the 8th grade? Because of how much bigger? Like, is there one more classroom, 2 more classrooms?
I don't know if you have those numbers, Shannon. I think the 9th grade has about 400 or so, is that right? And then the 8th grade is like maybe half of that. I can pull the numbers up though.
Yeah, it should be half. So whatever the Redlands 8th grade is, that's a differential between the size of the Fruta 8, 9, 8th and 9th grade class size.
Yeah, so currently we have 283 8th graders there. 423 9th graders.
Any other questions?
So I just want to kind of wrapping my head around it. I just want to summarize the, for the question 4, the options between 2 small middle schools and 1 large middle school. So it seems like the overall support of moving 9th grade into Fruita Monument is at about 75% or so. And then when you break that down to see if folks want 2 small middle schools or 1 large middle school, I see those as so similar. And I think that's where you said draw your own conclusions from that, maybe. But I just want to point out that those look very evenly split. There's a lot of support for moving it, and what would happen, we don't have super clear guidance there.
Yeah, and Shannon, maybe this is a question I have as we're watching this in real time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like we have some immediate needs we need to make some decisions around, or the board needs to make decisions around, and then there's some that maybe aren't as immediate. So the immediate need in my mind is that we have under-enrolled schools, and you have projections that are showing that we're going to continue to head in that direction. So that feels more immediate. We need to make some decisions around what we're going to do to address that. The Fruita grade configuration and then the scraping and replacing of old buildings, we have good data now to show that there's support for that, but my guess would be we have some time to look into that a little bit more, because those aren't decisions that are necessarily going to impact next school year. Consolidations could impact next school year, and so am I reading that wrong? And if I'm not, I would think we'd want to put more attention right now in these next few weeks on addressing the enrollment decline and consolidations versus spending time doing stakeholder groups with the 8, 9, 9, 12. Is that making sense?
It does, and that would certainly be my preference to do the more pressing items first. Regarding Fruta 8-9, I think that, and Fruta Middle School, I think that, again, those results are identical, and we would need to wade into how that would look with those stakeholder groups, and that would include the Redlands, that would include the 8-9 community, that would include Fruta Middle School. And I think that those original capacities were calculated on a junior high model that used 6 of 7 periods active. And these are big buildings. I mean, some of these buildings have 35 or 40 classrooms at the middle school level, but we're beginning to have some conversations with the principals that have revealed how they're actually using the buildings in a little bit more of a middle school model. So we would need to reconcile some of that, and that may kind of push us more toward doing 2 middle schools in Fruta versus 1. So I think that conversation needs to be had. But as Dr. Hill mentioned, I think that the urgency regarding our ability to effectively serve some of these smaller buildings with an appropriate staff at a reasonable cost is the more pressing issue. And if we would like to process that on a shorter term basis, isolating to that single issue makes a lot of sense to me.
Can I ask another question? This is Carrie again. So you'd said that we've gotten more clarity on the capacity question at the school. So to be clear, I believe that to mean that, so we know how many students are enrolled at those schools, but what is the capacity of that school? That's a slightly different question. So you
Right.
could count like how many seats are in the room, but that also is a slightly different question because there's not a child, there's not a student in every seat in every room at every minute. And so we have to manage our buildings with some flex time where not every classroom is used all the time. So that's why we're applying this 70 or 80% utilization rate or whatever that value might be. Is that?
That's correct. And I was really encouraged to find that some of these middle school principals have really sophisticated middle school block team schedules and, team organization. And so the calculations for those capacities are probably 5 years old now. And I think when those were done, it was run more on a middle school model. And there were some pretty significant special education deductions that I did. So for example, it appears that East and West Middle School are different sizes and they're identical buildings. It's just that when that examination was done, there was a different number of special education classrooms deducted. So that was used in those numbers, but the buildings themselves are actually identical. So I think that we've learned a lot more about how the buildings are actually being used this school year as a result of spending some time in them.
So do I understand that means that not only are our middle school principals doing an excellent job in being a lot more efficient with their space than these kind of more generic models, but also it means that our numbers have shifted a little bit from our more generic understanding of those numbers. Is that correct?
That's correct. From a capacity standpoint, I think we're looking at some pretty sophisticated scheduling as far as the middle school teaming that's being used. And I think it's probably pretty consistent across all the middle schools. So I was impressed to see that.
Okay. When will we see the updated numbers on capacities and utilization?
Well, I've got 4 scenarios. Junior high at 6 of 7, junior high at 5 of 7, middle school at 75% utilization, and then a middle school at a little bit of a compromised utilization. So I could have that available to the board possibly this week or early next.
And is that a projected future? You're saying that you would be targeting those utilizations. What those 4 scenarios represent what? So that's not existing scenarios. We have our models for our current usage based on a refined model that the principals gave you. So we have those numbers. And then these 4 scenarios that you're saying are for a future projection, or what were those 4 scenarios?
The existing numbers were based upon a junior high model calculated at 6 of 7 periods in use. So what I'm probably going to do is do 3 more scenarios that are more reflective of how the buildings are being used today.
Okay.
That won't dramatically affect any of the utilization percentages that we've seen in general terms.
Okay, so that's just a little
but-
sensitivity analysis. You did a sensitivity analysis, and you have a good feel for range.
And it will guide our decision-making and evaluation of the buildings that we might want to address. And I think that we would have, with the publication of those numbers, the principals nodding, saying, yes, that's the way I use my building.
So I didn't listen. I was too focused on trying to understand. When did you say we could see those?
Late this week or early next week.
Okay.
Yeah, the end of this week or early next. I'm looking at just focusing on the middle schools because I think that's the only level where we have a concern with capacity numbers, and I think we kind of know based upon current practice in these buildings what they hold. And I don't think it changes any of the potentials available to us to consider making a few changes.
So that felt like new information for me. I wasn't aware that it was just middle schools. So it sounds like no.
So I think he's talking about middle schools when you're looking at the capacity numbers might not be the same as what he presented. Elementaries, they're pretty standard.
Okay.
And that was where we presented to all the principals last week, and we were presenting to the APs this week along with the town halls, and that was some of the questions we got were mainly from middle school principals saying, I don't know if those numbers are accurate, so yeah. Yes. And I just, for our timeline, so we have a meeting tomorrow. The plan was for Shannon to present the preliminary survey data. I think we're looking for some direction on, one, is there support to continue down this path? And he mentioned those bullet points of some things he wants to do. I tend to agree that we've probably got enough data from the survey that leaving it open even longer is probably not going to yield different results. So if we close that, and then we have a meeting set up tomorrow to basically debrief this meeting and talk about all the things that need to be done leading up to the 21st meeting so that we could be able to present some scenarios and some options to the board. The board wouldn't be taking action on the 21st. We would need to have a discussion about when the board would want to take action, but that would be an opportunity to present everything that we're finding, that the work he's already done, but also what we need to do over the next 2 weeks. We've got to run some scenarios, so if he has some recommendations, we need to get those numbers, what are the new boundaries then if we did that scenario, and then lets Mel run her staffing numbers, and we can kind of look at it to see, is this actually getting at what we originally said we wanted to get at as far as addressing the staffing and how we're overspending by $3.1 million on staffing. There's facility conditions conversations. There's a lot of work that needs to be done between now and the 21st, but ideally, if the board is comfortable with the direction, then we would want to continue those conversations. We also, senior leadership, site directors, communications, we're all working through what a transition plan would look like, and really trying to map out what that would look like if the board were to take action on closing schools for next school year, like what would kick in immediately after that. So how would we support staff through that process? How would we support families through that process and students? And so we're working through that process right now of kind of creating right now it's a project management document, but creating a pathway for how we would support those communities that would be impacted by this. I realize that it feels like we're moving quickly on this, but there are pros and cons, I would say, to moving quickly or not moving quickly. Our budget situation is not going to get any better, so putting it off is actually going to make that worse. We've had conversations about if we put these decisions off for even longer, but or if we make a decision, but we say we're not going to have it take effect until a year from now, what does that do to the climate and culture in that building? No, it's going to close. Also you run into issues with if families know that a school's going to close a year later, they start pulling their kids and putting them in the new school. Like I think there's a lot of pros and cons for either, but I tend to feel like there's probably more cons for waiting, even though this may feel like it's happening quickly, but we just are in a budget situation, and there's not really unless we're going to get 1,300 kids that just moved to this area, or we're going to get a ton more money from the state. I don't know what else we would be looking into, so that's why it may feel like it's moving quickly, but we've got to make some decisions. And we want to make sure the board has all the information they need before they make that decision.
When we did get really good response on that survey, I mean, that was really impressive, how many of our community actually followed through very quickly to get us that information, which I think is unusual, correct?
So, Brian, maybe you could take one more step back and explain, so it does feel like it's happening quickly. Why did it happen right now? So, our student October counts came in, can you kind of talk about like why this is happening right now?
Mm-hmm. So I think, I won't dwell on the past too much, but we have had obviously been able to look at enrollment numbers from the past and seen that it was declining. We got this information and those facility utilization numbers and everything from Shannon. I think it was maybe beginning of December into November. That was the first time we saw it as a staff, and then wanted to get it in front of the board as quickly as possible. If we could turn back time and get those numbers earlier in the fall or in the last spring, maybe making a decision before February would have been great, but it is what it is, and we are where we are. And so I think the issue now becomes if we put it off for another year, that $3.1 million in overspending on staffing is going to turn to projected $3.8 million. So that's another $3.8 million that we can't spend on things like salary increases for teachers and other staff. And you're also still being ineffective with the usage of those buildings. So by having them underutilized, we're also spending more money on energy costs and things like that by keeping them online. The reason why it's coming now is we got that data later into the fall semester, and the issue we're running into right now is I think originally we talked about maybe bringing it in March, but even talking to the principals and then talking to HR, the longer we put off a decision, we're not posting positions right now because we're waiting to see what happens with this. And so other districts are hiring right now, and so that hurts us in posting positions. But we wanted to wait before we did any of those moves because that's part of that transition plan. If we're going to close a school, we want to make sure that the staff at that school have opportunities for positions within our district. We don't want to go and post a bunch of positions, then make a decision to close schools. So we're kind of behind the 8 ball on some of that. And so the earlier the decision is made, even though it may feel harsher, is probably a better one financially, and it actually, in the end of the day, probably is better for how we take care of the folks within our buildings and our schools or our students. Some of the angst that I've heard from staff has been, well, if you close the school, then that means you're just going to move all those kids to the other school and overcrowd their classrooms, and that's not the plan. We would need, because we would be moving kids into other buildings, we would have to adjust the FTE and staffing ratios at those buildings, so they would essentially have positions they'd be hiring for. So that's not the goal, is to overcrowd classrooms. And then the other thing that I've heard from staff is that the assumption that if we close a school, then we're just automatically laying everybody off at that building. And that's part of that transition plan of talking about options that we have for staff and how we can support them through those next steps. So we're trying to be mindful of all that through the next steps of this process. But again, the longer we put it off, it creates less time for us to be able to make those moves in that transition if it's going to happen for next school year. And it just puts us behind the 8 ball on a lot of different things. And when you think about having to move classrooms and equipment and desks and all that, it's a lot that we've started to create a list of, that would give us a leg up on being able to start that maybe a month earlier than we originally anticipated.
And can I just say one other, what I was thinking was, so everybody thought that after COVID, we would have a rebound. We didn't understand these larger population declines and population trends. And so everybody, you know, us, the state of Colorado, everybody was expecting a little bit of a rebound. And then when school started and we realized that our enrollment was not there, and then we started to collect data, and then the data came in, and then we realized what the data were saying. So it's not that I think that we've done a good job of staying on top of it, of saying, okay, well, here's what we expect. Okay, it didn't happen. Collect the data, figure out what to do. And yeah, it feels fast, but that's how the data collection and analysis process has gone. And I appreciate the actions that have been taken at each step of the way once we've realized that we needed to start taking action. So thank you.
Can I assume that, you know, we talked about site utilization, that, and we've seen the charts of schools and their capacity. So I have to assume those schools can read a chart and understand who's being looked at in this. Is that, are there going to be surprises for schools that were over the next couple of weeks that you're aware? It sounds like in your meetings, your staff.
Shane, you can chime in on this. I would say before we bring anything to the board in a public meeting, we would want to be able to talk to those communities so that they're not caught off guard at a board meeting.
Well, and that's good, because I think all of us have received calls and emails of concerns about, is it my school and stuff, and, you know, my response has been, we're gathering data, understanding the data, but now it sounds like it's clear why we're taking these steps. You know, in going to the public meetings, sometimes it looked like we're making these moves for good reasons, perhaps, about more efficiency and staffing this, but it's really a financial decision that's driving this mainly. Is that correct?
So it's a combination of, financial that's a reality, right? And just without having the slides in front of me to recap, like I said, we're overspending on staffing by 3.1 million this year, projected 3.8 next year. That five-year funding average, that how we are funded by the state, we're funded on a 5-year average. And so Mel, she has that slide with the bar charts that I'm looking at right now in my mind, that shows that we really only have like a year or two left of those higher funding years. And so right now we're actually being funded for $5 million more than we should based on per pupil count because of that averaging. So you think of and that's just going to continue to go down. So you think of a $5 to $6 million cliff from that, plus a $3.8 million we're overspending next year on staffing, plus ESSER going away. Like, yes, there's a definite financial need here with this. But then, you know, to the other slides in Shannon's presentation, there's the issues we're having with providing services at the schools when they get below a certain number. It makes it really hard to staff those schools. It creates problems with staff being able to have planning time together, to be able to look at student data and plan around instruction. So, yeah, it's not just finance. That is a big piece, is the financial, but it's also a level of service. And then you get into things like you talk to the principals, the less staff they have, the less supervision they have in the building, so it's a safety issue as well. So as those schools get smaller, it creates an issue for our school district. So that's why we're having to have these conversations now, and that's why it feels more immediate, because it is getting very serious on the.
I appreciate that personally, but I think for our community, internally and externally, understands that as well. And my, you know, among everything else we've talked about, I don't want to have anybody caught off guard, you know, and even though it seems quick, there's certainly reasons behind why we're taking the steps we are, but if it sounds like between now and the 21st, someone will be visiting with those schools that are going to be considered. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but they're being looked at for these reasons. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and Shane, I don't know if you want to add anything to that I already said.
There are a variety of factors. Obviously, if we're looking at the most underutilized schools, it's a pretty large number of schools. But from a city planning standpoint, a lot of those schools just aren't combinable because they're not next to another building that could accommodate the enrollment that would be moved. So The other thing is we want to try to preserve as many of our modern buildings that are in good condition as possible. So as we look at any of these moves, we need to be making a step up from a facility condition standpoint. We need to be recommending moves that are failure proof, if you will, as far as there being a long-term viability for how we would reassign children to a building. Would they wind up with a bigger faculty, with a richer level of service? And then in other cases, would we be winding up with a more efficient operational structure, larger faculty? The kids are in a more modern building. So that very quickly winnows the list of buildings that we would address to a smaller grouping. And it would be my intent to make sure that we don't unnecessarily upset a school community that really it doesn't make sense for them to be a combination candidate.
And the only other thing I mentioned is that, so Shannon has projections around, if a elementary school was closed, what would the savings be with that as far as, not having, again, the energy usage within the building, not having duplication of certain positions at the schools. So we can kind of project some of that out too. And then we would need to have a conversation with the board about what do we want to do with those spaces after the fact. So is it a building that maybe has some life left in it, not as a school building, but could be used as something else? So some of the ideas that have been thrown out at some of the meetings have been, if we're going to have early childhood continues to expand in the state, do we need an early childhood center somewhere? We've had questions around staff daycare before. So I think it also opens up some opportunities for maybe using, if the building is in good enough condition, using some of them for some other uses. Or if not, do we just, do we sell it off if it's a property we don't think we're going to use? So there's also some financial implications with that as well. I don't think we'd want to go open another school because then we just negated the work we did, but maybe there's some programmatic things we might look at as well.
So that all comes after, that's not part of our decision-making, to be clear. That would be next steps.
So I have one, this is kind of going back to Fruita, but I know Fruita Middle School went away from a block schedule because of, I don't know if it was lack of kids or maybe staffing. Is Redlands on a block schedule? Does anybody know if Redlands is on a block or are they on a middle?
Yeah, I know, obviously the impact over the last few years has forced many of our middle schools to come out of what's considered a middle school model. So we've had to do some teachers that are not just teaching one grade level, they're teaching multiple grade levels, or they could be teaching multiple contents. It has really reached out to all 8 of our middle schools have been impacted over the last
Okay.
2 or 3 years. I can't tell you exactly if his schedule right now is a block, but I know we have several, as Shannon mentioned, principals that have gotten very creative with trying to work through the staffing issues and try to go as much as possible.
Perfect. Well, and so obviously, when we're looking at Fruita, which is obviously a later decision that the board can approach, but if we're looking at keeping 2 middle schools, are we going to be looking at what would be best supportive for them around either a block schedule, or would, one larger middle school be more supportive? So just, again, put a pin in that down the road is, would one middle school in Fruita serve better because the scheduling would be more conducive than 2 middle schools? Is just some questions I would have when it comes time for that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And then we heard some feedback at that Fruita town hall meeting, and I received emails from families that ask some further questions around, is that the only solution, is just to add on to the high school and the 8-9? Could it be, nobody likes the topic, but do we look at boundaries potentially if it means it's going to be a no-cost option? So those are things we need to explore and decisions that I don't think we'd be making right now for next school year. But if we could look at some other options too that maybe wouldn't cost any money, I think we should explore them.
So in looking at that, so we don't continually change boundaries, is we kind of have to keep in mind the Fruita situation a little bit. yes, we can change boundaries years later, but it might be something to just kind of keep in mind, because if we're changing boundaries now with the school consolidation, would that ultimately help offset the enrollment at Fruita Monument so that we don't have to do as much construction out there because we can readjust the boundary line? So I know that one's not as pressing, but I think there's some elements there that we need to be mindful of if we're making some changes now that could maybe just save our community and families some of this change that, not having to change it every year or two with the boundary lines. But I do think if the board is good with it, I think we're ready for Shannon to move forward to do the other work and make the recommendation. I guess does the 21st give you guys enough time? If not, the board could call a special meeting just to go over this. We definitely want to make sure that, that sounds like a lot of stuff to do in the next 2 weeks.
I was gonna say I believe we can do it, but Shannon, I'm looking at you. Or maybe we say our goal is the 21st. If we don't feel like we have it ready, we will take it off the agenda. The issue, I think if we don't have it on the 21st, I would agree with maybe a special meeting even the next week, because otherwise we wait 2 weeks until the March meeting, and then we have spring break all in the middle of that. So I think we set a goal for the 21st, and we assume we're gonna do that, and then we'll let you know if we don't think we have it together.
Well, that sounds good. Yeah. You guys can aim for the 21st, but if you need a few more days, we can work that out.
I would also love to see those capacity numbers whenever. Thanks.
All right, capacity numbers too. All right. Any other questions, board? All right, thank you, Shannon, for presenting.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Have fun the next 2 weeks.
Well,
Got a
thanks.
lot of work to do. All righty. Next up, board, does anybody need a quick break? Okay, we're going to take just a 10-minute break, and then next up will be the strategic plan focus group for number 3. Ahead and get started again, because for the next presentation, we have some presenters that need to leave soon. So we want to make sure that we get them up here so that they can go on and do the things that they need to do. So whoever needs to go first, you come on up. Come on down.
We're presenting.
Button. I think so. All right. Good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. How you doing? It's an honor to be here tonight. Since our last presentation in November, our dynamic team has been working diligently to advance towards meeting the goals defined in our engaged and supportive community partners focus area of the D51 strategic plan. As we've dug into this work, we've gained collective clarity about how important it is to intentionally cultivate relationships of trust and respect with our families and our community partners. Clear and continuous communication about how we are collaborating with our stakeholders and allocating our resources is the pathway to gaining that trust and respect. And we have exciting updates to share with you today that will be highlighting our progress. Our entire team is united in our commitment to designing the ultimate plan that will ensure that each and every student receives an excellent education in D51. Intentional community engagement and authentic family partnership are not just key ingredients to building long-term sustainable success for our organization. They're really the main ingredients. Tonight, Clint and Mel and other members of their implementation team will start off the presentation with a brief update on the progress they've made to allocate resources through a lens of fiscal responsibility and how that aligns with our strategic plan. Following their team, Dr. Christensen and Bo Tobin will give a brief update on our progress towards mapping out community partnerships, and we'll be inviting a couple of our valuable community members from their implementation team to share their perspectives about the importance of partnership with the district. And to finish off our presentation, Callie, Carrie, Estrella, and I will share what we learned from our communication audit and how we plan to move forward to ensure high-quality communication for all of our families, as well as some details about how we will strengthen our family partnerships over the next few years. First up to bat is Clinton Mel. And friends.
All right. Good evening, board. Thank you for having us tonight. I can tell you, I feel a lot smarter working with this group. They are amazing. So thank you guys for the work that you do. We are Priority Area 3, Transparent and Effective Resource Allocation. And when our team presented back in November, we shared with you the methods with which we were beginning to gather data. And we also shared with you our plans to present this information in a way that is comprehensive and transparent through an easy to understand lens of building profiles. Our team has also been working on some out-of-the-box thinking on how building funds are allocated and the possibilities that may exist to provide more proportionate allocations of those funds. So tonight our team has quite a bit of information to share with you around the work that we've been doing and where we are in the process. So let me reintroduce the team to you and then we'll get started. So Ashley Zhang is our account supervisor. Mr. Dan Bollinger is our Palisade High School principal. Mr. Dan Prinster, Vice President of Development at St. Mary's Hospital. Janelle Ochoa, Finance Accountant. Rachel Talley, Human Resource Data Analyst. Melanie Trujillo, CFO. And Clint Garcia, Chief Operations Officer. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Dan Bollinger.
Okay, as you can see, the transparent and effective resource allocation, at this point, we are on track for our first year goals. If you look at the next slide, we're on track regarding the year one goals, but we have much to complete yet this year. We have completed our understanding of how our budget operates to have our baseline knowledge at a high level. We're in the process of completing a complete district profile that includes each school. So a school profile, this should create a clearer understanding of the needs at each school and simplified. We'll now start the work of inventorying each program, reviewing each program. That will include the type and the cost, and we'll also start to work on reviewing and understanding the capital resources to be able to prioritize for equitable funding. Got a lot of work to do.
So in reviewing budget categories, we looked at the district's revenue sources. This first chart shows a breakout of revenue from all funds for fiscal year 21-22. As you can see, Fund 10, or the General Fund, generated the largest piece of revenue at 46%. The General Fund is the least restrictive fund, while all other funds are more restrictive on how revenue can be spent due to the sources of the funding. For example, Fund 41 is the Building Fund. It generated 27% of the district's revenue through bond proceeds, but can only be used in the construction of Grand Junction High School. Fund 22 is a governmental designated purpose grants. It generated 8.8% of the district's revenue, but can only be used for the specific intent of each grant award. So when we think about the flexibility of funds, 54% of our funds are non-flexible, which is the red portion, being for specific purposes, and the remaining 46% for the general fund, the green portion, is considered to be more flexible in how it can be utilized. Drilling down in the 46% general fund portion, state revenue from CDE makes up the largest portion at 61%, followed by property tax, which includes our mill levy overrides at 31%, specific ownership taxes at 5%, and then other local funds. Also, you can see in the bottom right corner, there is a breakdown of what is included in other local funding. Examples include interest, the senior veterans exemption, which is reimbursement from the state for property tax exemptions giving to senior citizens and veterans, and mineral lease revenues. Now that we have seen what resources make up the general fund, this next chart is showing how those general fund dollars were spent in the 21-22 school year. Salary and benefits are by far the highest expenditure category at 77%, followed by purchase services such as the cost of transportation and special education contracted services at 10%, transfers to charter schools and other district funds transfers at 7%, and supplies such as utilities, fuel, and printing and copies at 4%.
So we know from the data in the previous slides, the two main sources of the district's most flexible revenue are state revenue from CDE and the property tax revenue. We wanted to see how these funding sources in our district compared to other similar districts. These comparable districts have similar attributes to the district, such as size, area, demographic, and the PPR funding. As you can see, the blue bars representing the PPR funding are very similar, varying only $545 per student from highest to lowest. Where we really see a lot of variance is in the local support dollars through meal levy overrides, shown in orange, ranging from $41 per student all the way to over $5,300 per student. D51 is the second to the lowest among our peer schools at $754 per student. What this graph also shows is that School District 51 is below the average per pupil revenue and the meal levy override per student. The average of these 10 schools was $10,779 per student, and the School District 51's funding was $9,502 per student. Part of our analysis was to overlay student performance to this information, represented in green line. As you can see, at the surface level, there doesn't appear to be much correlation. Poudre has the highest per student funding, yet has a district performance framework rating of 63.6%. Colorado Springs 11 has the second highest funding per student, yet has the lowest student performance rating. School District 51 has the second to lowest per student funding, yet has a mid-range student performance percentage at 54%. However, one piece of information we don't have at this point is what use each district's meal levies were passed for. Of our own 3 meal levies, 2 were passed to support operations of new schools built in 1996 and 2004. The third one, passed in 2017, has uses designed specifically to address student outcomes, such as update curriculums and additional contact days, but sunset in 2027. This, of course, is only one data point to performance, but as a district, we know how important these meal levy dollars have been for students' growth and to our system. With that sunsetting meal levy in mind, this last graph shows that D51's meal levy will drop to, this one shows what D51's meal levy will drop to after it expires, and also taking into account Brighton's November 2022's election, which is the bar with a green top. In this more recent election, Brighton passes a significant meal levy, going from lowest per student to leapfrogging D51, making us now the lowest in meal levy override dollars per student amongst our peers. Rachel will now speak to the work. We are done on our second go around profiles.
So we often talk about where and how money is allocated at the district level. But as part of this process, we also wanted to bring that data down to a school level. To that end, we've been developing school profiles for our elementary and secondary schools. This data collection has allowed us to present data in a meaningful way for each individual school and includes information on the school's state performance rating, building information such as the square footage and the cost to heat and cool the building, student enrollment and demographics such as the free and reduced percentage, staff demographics, and a funding profile into one centralized format and location. While we recognize that the data on these profiles do not tell the whole story of a school, it is a powerful snapshot showing the various components it takes to make school happen each and every day. This data has evolved as we continue to ask questions and collect information, so not all of the information is populated yet, and the information presented may continue to grow and change. Our plan is to make this data available to parents and community members who want to know more information about their children's or neighborhood schools. This data will also help us by allowing for comparison not only with other districts, but also within our district to help identify where we are having success and where we might be struggling.
So while that's the public piece of it and the outward facing, behind the scenes, we're also using this collected data for deeper analysis of our efficiencies and effectiveness. We're looking at the data holistically to see how factors such as a building's age might affect utility and maintenance costs. For example, we know that our student population is changing and that our buildings currently have a wide range of utilization. We're looking at staffing and enrollment numbers by level to better understand the ideal sizes for schools and at which points they become challenging to staff and operate efficiently. On the funding side, there is a wide range of available resources per student, is what we've been finding. Philosophically, we've always distributed general fund dollars on an equal per pupil basis, but when coupled with the dollars that generate through a school's SBA, their student body activities funds, such as fees, donations, fundraising, and grants, it really gives a wide variation, with some schools having significantly more outside support than others. This has led us to question whether our practice of giving the same dollar amount to each school is truly equitable or not. And these are some of the areas we'll be digging deeper into as we continue our strategic plan work.
So in summary, as a taxpayer and business person, I'm really excited about the work of this group. I think taxpayers will really appreciate the transparent data that they'll be able to use to identify sources of revenue, the uses of the revenue, and comparisons in such information like per pupil funding. In business, we use comparable data all the time to identify opportunities to improve performance. And this comparable data, I think, will be really helpful for the school district as they look at ways to improve efficiency and also look at ways to assist them in making some of the tough strategic decisions that you have in front of you. So I want to thank the school board for giving me a chance to be part of this team, because they've really been amazing.
So any questions that you have?
Are you guys building out those school profiles? Those are really impressive. That looks amazing. Are any other districts doing that, or?
So I think so. I think we've seen, I think Jeffco maybe has one. And so some of them really have like an overwhelming amount of information where it's a lot to click through, but we wanted to really target ours. And so Rachel, definitely the formatting wizard and pulling in all of the data imports and everything that will populate those, because we want it to be something that can be updated yearly, right? That it doesn't just, take all the time to build these out and they go stagnant. So we've built out a couple example schools, but we really were looking for your feedback too before we completed the rest of that work, so that we have a really solid template to be able to build out the rest of them for.
I think those look really good. And I mean, one rule in marketing is you need plenty of white space behind there. I think sometimes you try to put too much data on there, you lose people within a couple of minutes and they're not going to read the rest of it. I think one thing, and maybe you had it on there, is I don't know if everybody understands what FTE is. So do you guys have some defining little terms maybe down there? Because I could see somebody I didn't know what FTE was until I was a board member. So I think there might be some little defining things there that would be helpful for the public to be like, well, what is that? So maybe some little asterisks or something that would explain what those are. Because I know a lot of people don't understand that schools have a certain amount of autonomy and money that they get to utilize and spend for within their building. And so when we talk about FTE in our meetings, maybe that people will start making the correlation between like, oh, we get so many FTE in our building to choose from, so I think what we can do is it'll start connecting those pieces for our community to understand what we're all, speaking about. So,
Can you put it back on that slide?
yeah, that one was so impressive.
Just like to look at it a little closer. The whole.
Yeah, it was the other tab.
There you go.
Yeah, that looks so good.
I was gonna say, what else?
So you'll notice down here that there are some fields that say data pending. So I think we presented to you guys last time about some of our challenges with data collection. That we recognize that we don't have all these pieces, otherwise we probably would be looking at them before right now, right? And so some of these are like future things that we're aspiring to collect and be able to throw in as part of our analysis. So like our maintenance costs, our work orders, the number of hours that go into maintaining our buildings every year, and then just being able to put in, like over on the right-hand side, transportation costs or nutrition services. That's more readily available. We just need to actually do the work to parse it out and assign it to each school.
Is there, the only thing I can think of that maybe I would add to it is if there's a major improvement that needs to be scheduled at some point for that building. We were just talking about that a little earlier today.
There's this, or you guys have this special programs housed here, but maybe if there was something bigger, maybe you could kind of do like a projection. I think that's great.
There's so many of these things that would be so easy as a board member to look at each school and be able to get your arms around any little piece of data that we might be, bugging you guys for on a regular basis because we need it, but it's a little tougher to get. We could have access to it very quickly. But again, having our focus on the maintenance and the upgrades and the shape of our buildings currently, and just to have a little bit of a visual to what we've got coming up that we need to make sure that we've got.
Yeah, I think it would be really easy to do that. We know what we're going to be doing with those buildings as we talked.
Yeah.
To be able to put it up so you can see, and the forecast for projects for each of those buildings would be helpful. Yeah.
That's all I can see off the top of my head.
When you're doing this or creating these, are you getting feedback from staff and parent community? And I bring that up because you can have what looks like a profile, looks accurate, and would that school see themselves in that data? Because sometimes the data may not really reflect everything. These schools are more than just numbers sometimes. But it would be nice, say, yep, that looks like us, or if you added this part, and that would be, you want to make them, right, standard for all the schools, but if that's been.
We haven't pushed anything out yet. I think it's all been kind of behind the scenes, just trying to put something together and again, to get some feedback, and this is all good stuff. I think we can absolutely maybe do a test run with a building and go through it. Well, we have one right here, actually.
Well, that's when I saw Dan there, and I thought, Dan would get that. It's a profile of Palisade, for instance. Does that reflect that? Yeah, that gives people a real good impression of what Palisade is or isn't, kind of thing.
It's a good question, too. I think it depends on who you ask what they're going to be looking for. So obviously right now, a lot of this information up there is, you look at the team, so we have a lot of finance and building utilization, things like that. But I think that it does open up an opportunity for that left side there for being able to highlight programs within the school. If there's other things, like the one we had in Austin did not have all this other data, which is great. It was more focused on, tell us about all the programs you have in the building and things of that nature. So if there was a way to do both of them, then you could tell the story of the school and highlight IB at Palisade, but then also have this other data. Like you said, you don't want it to be overwhelming, though.
Yeah. No, you're right. There comes a point you don't want to go too far, but I could see on a staff, people might want to know the makeup of the staff and their experience and, just things like that. I don't know.
It's good feedback, because I think we're focused on, transparent resource allocation, and everybody's thinking the dollars and everything, but there is another side to it, and I think this is some good feedback that we can.
But then to Andrew's point, you don't want so much that it's like, you lose the point of what you're trying to do.
Is this helpful for all of you? Is this going to be like a one place where you guys can consolidate this, or is this extra work to try to, put it together? I would hope that it would be also helpful for all of you having the information. Maybe able to just
So I'm looking at Rachel, but
delegate the board to not asking you as many questions. You can just tell us to go
I
look
don't
on
want
the
to be the only
website.
one talking, but I can speak just from my ready experience with this. Is we have a big Google sheet, but that builds all of these fields in right behind the scenes, and I already go to that thing a couple, 2-3 times a day because it is a one-stop shop where we can have that information. So even just the Google Doc itself, not the pretty infographic one, it is a nice to have all of that information gathered in one central location. So that was our intention, was that it's a resource for us internally too, to make decisions and to have available as data, but also for you as board members, for community, like maybe somebody just wants to go see their kid's school and see what's going on from not just the school's website, but how it might compare to other schools that they're familiar with too.
Great.
You've asked if it's been helpful for me. It's been helpful as a catalyst to be able to start some of these pending fields that don't have information in them yet, to drive that and to be able to put it in place.
I'm going to echo what they said. A lot of times you can have like a philosophy or a theory, right? Like you think this is what's happening, but then once you get the data kind of in black and white and in front of you, especially with kind of the large scale and the scope that we've built here, you can start to see maybe some correlations or some things that you want to start to crosswalk. So just by having the data, it's actually prompted more questions for us. It kind of feels like a vicious circle in a way, because we get some information, then we're like, well, what about this? And so then, we just continue to build and build.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, that exact same thing as I'm looking at your year one goals. I'm looking at, there were 4 categories, kind of exploring how budgets operate, creating the district and school profiles, and then one thing that says it's not started or has just started is the inventory of programs and allocations, review of programs type and cost. Yeah, I would imagine as you start to do that, and as we were saying, adding the special programs, my next question is like, and what do they align to, which is robust and aligned options. And, I feel like it is going to be a challenge to kind of pull back and what questions are we trying to ask and answer. But yeah, I can see it having more components to it. Okay, so on those year one goals, the first category is how our budgets operate. Build baseline knowledge of systems and processes, high-level review of budget categories. So you used that to fill in these components. Are we using that for any other decision-making? So kind of getting back to like, how useful is this? Is this an exercise just for the exercise, or how are we, so this like baseline knowledge of systems and processes, how are we using that new built knowledge or that consolidation of knowledge?
Yeah, so thinking back to, what was it, November when we presented the first time? I don't know, our first one, we had some artifacts that we had just started pulling together. Like there's a budget timeline that's a little Prezi document that you can click through month by month to see kind of what happens in the budget process, where we're at on how staffing happens, and really just demonstrating that it is a whole 12-month cycle. It's not just an event that happens a couple times a year. And so I think to our own transparency pages, and certainly like if we move to an easier to navigate website, that probably plays in. And so right now we haven't put a lot of those artifacts and the things that we've been using to gather our own internal knowledge on this committee and push them out. But I think it's all things that can be used to strengthen our transparency, to really go above and beyond the quarterly financials and the audits and all of those things that the state requires us to put out there, and really use them to start telling our financial story and putting out information that might just be interesting rather than required out onto like our financial transparency page.
And Carrie, I feel a little different than Clint. He feels smarter working with them. I don't. I listen to them and I'm like, I got so much to learn. What, I know, but it's truth, right? What I found is how much money we get as a district and how little we really have control over where it goes. And that was really important to me when we're looking at, you know, I run a school and we have, 40 schools in the district. And if we get 400 million, that means I should get 100 million of it, right? And it just doesn't equate quite like that. And so it was really important for me to understand how big the budget is, but how little we actually have control over. And that's been my push all year, and I think that's why I got put on this committee.
Thanks. Well, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you all. That's really great. I think we have the next section for a strategic plan. Great. Thank you all for staying as well. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, so next up, Dr. Christensen and her team. And we're just so lucky to work with so many talented individuals that work in our district, but also in our community, and that's what's been really fun for me.
Just pull up any extra chairs if we need them, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having us here tonight, and thank you for your hard work on looking at this and what we've been doing. We are the Effective Community Partnerships, and I just want to begin by highlighting the members of our team. I'm working with Andrea Bolton, who couldn't be here tonight. Bo Tobin has really stepped in as one of the key leaders. We also have Candace Carnahan, Jody Deers, Kayla Brown, Raul de Viejas Decker, Gabriel Otero, Joy Hudak, Trisha Gialanza, Eric Ward, Tabitha Britt, Martha Graff, Sarah Schrader, and Sonia Gutierrez. So as you can see by that list, it's a pretty robust list of folks who have really been willing to come meet with us. We started this with all of you this last fall, and so we really appreciate all of their input. We are all part of the Engaged and Supportive Community Partnership focus area. Under this area and group, we're leading effective community partners to advance our strategic goals. Last November, when we were here, we shared that our primary objective is to identify and communicate strategic partnerships with organizations and institutions in the community to support the advancement of the district's strategic goals. As a reminder, we've been charged with focusing in on the following partnerships. So it's not just any partnership, and I think that's pretty important. It certainly was in my mind as we looked at these. The first are looking at student opportunities for career connection learning, wellness and supports beyond the classroom for staff and students, and engaging with families and deepening relationships. And after spending time reviewing our partner data, we really felt it was important to add an additional category, and that includes financial support, because so many of our partners are doing that. And some of our donors support all three areas and even more. If our goal is having equipped and empowered students and staff, then identifying engaged and supportive community partners is key. Our year one goal was to include developing a map of community partners and developing a tool to measure that level of engagement. And we're excited, and we'll be really thrilled to share that with you at our next presentation. Tonight, though, we're pleased to share some updates on the progress we've made and introduce you to a couple more of our key community partners.
Right on, yeah, thank you. Pleasure being here. As you can see, we're on track in achieving our year one goal, which is developing a map of community partners. Our team has created a spreadsheet to help us identify current partners and identify the type of support they offer to our district. Within the tool, we have added a way to gauge depth of their partnership, allowing us to complete our second goal. So far, we have mapped 171 partnerships, with 38% of partners devoted to student career readiness, 9% in student and staff wellness, 7% in family support and engagement, and 46% in our new donor category, which truly supports all of the above areas. Based on this data, we are heavy in identifying career readiness and financial partnerships. Our big lift will be getting input from other district leaders to assist in identifying key partners in the student and staff wellness and family support and engagement. In an effort to start this work, we have already reached out to district leaders to seek their input. In addition, we have included a link to this tool in DLT and are happy to report that we've had more partnerships added recently to our tracking tool. And I mean, we talk about it all the time, but we know we have so many darn partners out there, and we're proud of those partnerships, but I mean, our goal is to really identify what we're missing. I mean, what more can we do to establish greater, stronger partnerships?
So working together, we can ensure that each and every student has the resource and support that they need for their brightest future. And this matters because all of us are D51. And with that in mind, it's our pleasure to introduce you to two more of our very well-established partners to briefly share how they partner with D51 and why they partner with D51. So I'd like you to go ahead and introduce yourself, if that works, and share those two.
Roll this way so you all can hear me. So thank you for having me. Good evening. My name is Tabby Britt. I'm the Youth Employment Specialist at the Mesa County Workforce Center. A large pillar of our mission at the Workforce Center is to promote safety, stability, and meaningful employment for our community. And as you well know, as School District 51, the journey to success starts young. My aim as the Youth Employment Specialist is to introduce students early and often to the tools available to them in our community in order to find that successful and meaningful employment. I assist students with career exploration, job searching, resume creation, and interview preparation. Our partnership with D51 allows me many opportunities to get face-to-face with students. I'm invited into classrooms to present workshops, given the chance to collaborate on school staff hiring events and career fairs, and many students are referred to meet with me by adults at their schools. I administer licenses for the Pathful Explore virtual job shadowing program that many students and teachers utilize within D51 to explore career options and determine their personal path to success. Since February of 2022, we've collaborated on 6 career or hiring fairs, 8 on-site workshops, and several mock interview days. We are currently working on an additional career and hiring fair at Central High School and the first summer job and activity fair on April 18th at the Workforce Center for all high schools in the district. I'm looking forward to seeing how our partnership with D51 grows over the coming years and impacts as many students as possible through our collaborative work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the partnership that's been going on for such a long time. And now we've asked Raul de Villegas Decker, who's with the School District 51 Foundation, to share a little info with all of you.
So good evening. My name is Raul de Villegas Decker. I'm a clinical and organizational psychologist and a small business owner. Over the last 10 years, I have partnered with the school district in many ways, including serving as president of the D51 Foundation. I've been a member of the Strategic Plan Steering Committee and now as a head coach of the girls varsity soccer team at Palisade High School. As a member of the D51 Foundation Board of Directors, I saw firsthand the value of connecting our business community with our school district. As many of you know, the D51 Foundation has raised funds to support technology for students and professional learning for D51 staff. This past weekend, we celebrated our 11th White Eye celebration with 890 registered guests. This is quite the growth from our 2013 guest list of 78. Moreover, the foundation, with support from community partners, has awarded over $100,000 to educators in pursuit of professional learning opportunities. As a business owner in the behavioral health field, I noticed an increasing demand for staff to recognize and stress mental health issues within schools. We've all seen initiatives like mental health first aid, socio-emotional learning, and suicide prevention implemented in school settings. Despite the education and structure that comes with these initiatives, I have witnessed educators struggle with the toll of these demands on their emotional well-being. As a result, my business has offered low-cost consultation services to educators and mental health professionals who work for school district. This partnership has been satisfying and gratifying for me personally because it allows me to equip and empower staff to take on these additional but important responsibilities. As a member of the Strategic Plan Steering Committee, I voice the importance of ensuring the staff receives the necessary preparation and support from the district and our community. To truly support staff in the complex work of educating our children, our community will need to come together and develop dynamic systems to provide educators with the financial, physical, and emotional resources they deserve. These posters, this is one from 2017. You will see here, and do you mind holding the other one for me? Thank you. So you'll see from 2017 to where we are in 2023, there are many more business partners on this, and we are very grateful for their participation and support of the D51 Foundation. They just illustrate just how much the D51 Foundation has achieved in connecting our community partners with the school district. I am certain that through the work of the strategic plan, the school district will develop many more engaged and supportive community partners over the next few years. I am honored to serve members of the D51 family and appreciate all that they have done for my daughter's growth. It is in large part due to our teachers, coaches, principals, and support staff that she and over 20,000 students have the opportunity to reach their potential. I have been humbled and amazed by what our educators do and who they are. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Raul. And I just want to thank Tabby and Raul and also Eric, who has been here at all of our presentations. We really appreciate your involvement in coming out to celebrate this.
Thank you for your time this evening, and are there any questions?
Are you, so when you first went out to ask for sponsorships, I'm guessing you had to kind of search for businesses. Are you now having businesses seek you out to want to sponsor? I mean, just tell us maybe how that's, the tables have switched. So.
Yes, I've been in this role now for 6 years, and I have to tell you, that is exactly where we are now. And it's been very exciting with the foundation, where I receive calls. I had calls even the week of White Ice Celebration, because I'm sure people heard of the promotion and said, hey, we'd actually like to sponsor. And while the those opportunities might not present themselves as you can imagine, I came up with a few other ideas of how they could help, and we definitely connect with them next year. But that has been exciting.
I have a question. So as we map out who are our community partners and what they are doing to support D51 or engage with D51, and ultimately somebody had said that, you know, the ultimate goal is actually to figure out where the gaps are and figure out where those holes are. That's not part of the year one goal, right? Or is that part of the year one goal?
It actually is. Okay. At the end is looking at those gaps. So while we have 171 partners identified, and really just in those 4 areas, because as you can imagine, there are hundreds and hundreds of partnerships. We've dialed it down to just those. And we're seeking input from everyone. We've sent it out in DLT Weekly, because it's hard to imagine all the different partnerships that are going on. And so we need input, things that we don't even realize are happening with partnerships with businesses. But that is one of our goals, is to identify gaps in partnerships. So our final presentation, I'm hopeful we'll be able to present that.
Have we started to think, like, how do we identify a gap in support? So are we looking at, are we aligning it to our, you know, performance and growth or student wellness, like the other parts of the strategic plan?
That would be my thought, which was why we had Bo update you on what percentage of each of our partnerships. And I feel like by looking at those and just kind of evaluating that and making the decision from there, it looks like we are missing some partnerships. And so that's our hope and plan.
Yeah, I look forward to that. I feel like it's a really challenging endeavor to wrap my head around how we identify the gaps. Yeah, what is a gap in the community versus what are we working on within the district? And of course, those things should all align. But I really look forward to what you guys put together. Just have no idea what's going to come out of it. I'm so excited.
Well, the big job has been identifying who our partners are right now. And actually, yeah, that's been a rather big task.
Do you think that in identifying the partners, that might also be I don't know, the word's eluding me, but just like that might help you identify the gaps. Like, you know, as you're going out and you're talking to the partners, they might say, well, we should probably talk to this person. So it's, I guess when I see it, I think it's a rather challenging thing. It's like, how do you know what you don't know sort of idea. But I think as you're identifying your partners and you're speaking to them, they might see something different where you're like, oh, we should probably talk to this partner. You know, they might actually be the ones that help us identify those gaps. Great. Any other questions? Awesome. Well done, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to go ahead and invite Callie and Carrie and Estrella to come join me here at the table to go over our last portion of our presentation this evening.
Thank you all for staying, and thank you for your time this evening.
Good evening, board. Thanks for having us tonight. Part of our year one goal was to seek a communications audit and review its current tools to see which ones could be used more effectively and determine if any should be added. Our communications audit was completed back in September, and last time we spoke, we kind of gave you a 30,000-foot overview of the findings of that audit. After having some time to analyze the data that came from the audit, we have compiled that information and are moving forward based on and this is a very long title, National School of Public Relations Association Benchmark Rubrics of Practice. The rubric serves as a tool that will identify components of a district's communication system and divides them into the following 5 sections. Those sections are comprehensive planned communications, internal communications, parent-family communications, marketing and branding communications, and crisis communication. So tonight, we're going to go over those 5 components and how the communications department is working towards implementing streamlined and effective communication in each of these areas. So the first section is comprehensive planned communications. During the audit, it was advised that we develop a comprehensive plan that brings together multiple plans that we had in the department, which were marketing communications, internal communications, and stakeholder communications. So developing a plan that brings all of these components together will ensure that as a department, we are communicating consistent messages to all of our stakeholders. So the communications department has developed a strategic communications plan. And within that plan, the following 5 goals and objectives will be our overarching focus, which will have strategies and tactics on how we carry out each objective. So those 5 strategies are going to be strategic communications, brand recognition and awareness, family and community engagement and partnerships, internal communications, and employee recruitment and retention. The next section in the NSPRA benchmark rubric is internal communications. So we know that employee communication influences employee engagement, it influences employee productivity, and it influences employee motivation. And that is directly tied to the culture of a school or our school district. So a primary role of what Carrie and I will do is inform and inspire employees. It was evident through our communications audit that there is definitely a lack of consistency and difficulty finding information that has been shared or posted. So we will continue looking for ways to streamline and grow our internal communications. And we aren't quite there yet, but we are exploring some different ideas such as master event calendars that are going to be shared between the school administration and the communications department. News or ways to communicate critical news and updates for employees, and then employee shout-outs and recognitions. And we do some of that through different forms of communication that already go out, but we would like to enhance those. And as a department, we want to ensure our employees are informed and engaged with what is happening in the district. So moving on to parent and family communications, this is another NSPRA benchmark, and it's also a high priority for our department, and one of the top priorities that our communications audit outlined. So as we spoke last time, there's a pretty large gap in communications of the demographics that we serve. And in order to close that gap, we want to establish a new family welcome toolkit in both English and Spanish. This toolkit will contain valuable information and resources to welcome families into our district and to provide them with tools that will help them navigate our school district and also be successful. It will be available in print at all of our schools so that our school sites feel empowered as a resource to all of our families and can serve as an extension of the communications department no matter the language our families use. This toolkit is planned to be implemented for the start of the 23-24 school year after our focus area conducts visits with our families to determine what is going to be needed within that toolkit. And Tracy and Estrella will talk a little bit more about that in a bit.
Section 4 reviews our marketing and our branding. We knew going into the communications audit that our website just keeps going in and out. Is it going in now? It's green. That's okay. So we knew going into the communications audit that our website was hard to navigate and a bit outdated. The audit revealed just how difficult it was for both our staff and our community to utilize our website as a resource. As we work to streamline our communications tools, we are working toward revamping our website platform. Data on the website from our communications audit revealed that our overall website was graded at a C+, scoring extremely low on usability and low on SEO or content searchability. We have formed a website steering committee composed of teachers, school administrators, IT personnel, curriculum, human resources, and personal development. We are working together to find what platform will work best for the district as a whole so that our website can serve as a primary source of information for our stakeholders. To help serve our school staff in a greater capacity, we will also be implementing Canva Enterprise. Canva is an online design platform that helps individuals without a design background create professional marketing content for their organization. The communications department will create branded templates that can be used for all schools in the district so that the communication and social media postings have the same look and feel on all platforms. Our crisis communication is a key topic of the INSPIR benchmarks. In the 2022-23 school year, the communications department sent out over 250 reactive communications. We would like to see our communications department transition to be more proactive in communicating with our families, including proactively communicating school safety protocols and how families will be notified of emergency situations. Our department will be working with the Safety and Security Department to develop a better standard for crisis or emergency communications. This will include having incident benchmarks. As incidents in the schools hit certain thresholds, the level of communication will match the incident, and this will be standardized across the district. For example, what we send out for a shelter in place for a medical issue at a school will be different from the communication we send out for a lockdown of a school. Training of district staff and leaders is essential to understand the implementation of the crisis communication plan components. No plan can cover every crisis scenario, but an understanding of the plan components is foundational to delivering high-quality communications during a crisis. As we head toward the finish of the first year of our strategic plan, the communications department is working on all areas that we have presented to you this evening, with the goal that we will be able to effectively tackle our 2-year goal of the strategic plan, which is to develop and test a portfolio of communications tools that meet the diverse needs of the community it serves. By working on the foundation for this goal now, we will be able to build that portfolio and reach more of our families. Tracy and Estrella will now speak on how they are working on their 1-year goal serving families that speak a language other than English.
Thanks, Carrie. So I have some exciting information to share with you tonight. First of all, the Colorado Statewide Family Engagement Center. So the Colorado Department of Education, the Colorado Education Initiative, and the National Center for Families and Learning have partnered to build the capacity of families, schools, and communities to address learning recovery, as well as implement practices and systems to improve student development and family well-being across the state of Colorado. Because of our commitment to improving how we connect with families in our strategic plan, we've been given the opportunity to participate in this 5-year program. It's called the Colorado Statewide Family Engagement Center. This will help us design and build family partnership infrastructure based on the dual capacity building framework, which really is the gold standard in family engagement practices. The first step in this process is to utilize $150,000 RISE 3 grants to create a roadmap for family partnership and to develop a voice visit program, which is kind of like a home visit program, but I really like the terminology voice visit better because I feel like there's like a negative connotation to home visits. So we're going to create this voice visit program to help us gain a thorough understanding of our family's strengths, hopes, dreams, and needs. After our roadmap is developed, we will work closely with the other 4 school district members, as well as the excellent partner organizations, to make sure that we're on track to meet our year 2 and year 3 goals.
Okay. So I'm Estrella. I'm the Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Education Family Coordinator. And so the roadmap that we will be working on starting March through May will build a foundation for family partnership. We will be conducting voice visits during the summer to learn from our families what their needs are and the supports that are available in our district and community. Knowing what our families need will give us the data that we need to build the family toolkit that will outline all the resources and services that we as a district offer and that we are lacking.
Can we answer any questions?
Thank you. I have a quick question. Is there a parent on the steering committee for the website? Oh, okay, I missed that. As a parent trying to navigate our website, I feel confounded a lot of the time. So glad about this endeavor. What'd you say? Yeah. I have a question about, this is just so minor, about the name of Voice Visit. I wonder how people, when they hear that, I wonder what they think, because I wonder, a few things, this is so specific, but, for folks who maybe can't speak, it feels a little ableist, but just to note that. But I also wonder if people who speak different languages, if that reads as though there's some expectation. I just wonder what that means to people who hear
It doesn't seem very descriptive to me.
And
It doesn't explain
Yeah.
what it is that means in a simple way, that if there's a language barrier or anything like that, that it would overcome that.
So that's a great point, and we have not decided to call it voice visits. I think was a recommendation coming from some of the organizations that have used it, because they did some community engagement and learned that home visit is typically.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I
So-
totally know where you're coming from with that one. But it seems to me that we could come up with something that still better described what it is we're doing than voice visit. Like, what is
We absolutely can. You bet.
it's like?
Well, even just like face-to-face.
Or like
that
a
means
welcome
you are-
visit,
Yeah,
you
or
know,
welcome
just
visit. Yeah, it
anything.
means I know what you're trying to say is that it's not just gonna be a virtual visit, right? It's actually that you want to visit in their home, so.
Yeah, we're going to invest. We're going to try to have parents
Yeah.
alongside educators involved in the process and really do some training and make sure that we are doing this the right way.
Yeah,
Great.
no, that's great.
I love it, and I love that you're doing it. I'm sorry that we had to.
No, it's good, but we need your feedback. Absolutely.
I also, just really quickly, just for my own clarification, I don't have the slide, but there were 5 outcomes of the audit. Was that hierarchical, or were those just like randomly numbered? Because you said, at some point, you said that like, the parent conversation was found to be a high priority. Can you walk me through the prioritization?
Sure. So within the National School of Public Relations Association, they actually gauge school districts' communication departments, and those are their 5 rubric. That's their kind of what they grade the communications department under those 5 sections. So within that last section, which was parent and family communications, through our audit that we did, which was not related to NSPRA, that was one of the top findings within our audit, was to make sure that we were addressing that demographic gap that we have in our communications. And so our audit broke down some of the top priorities, which were, crisis communication. What we outlined in our communications plan were the 5 top priorities that were outlined in the strategic communications plan. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And so that came back as one of our highest priorities, is engaging, communicating with families.
Who speak a different language. Yes, yeah, so the Welcome Toolkit would be available in both English and Spanish at schools to kind of serve that demographic gap that we have. But we could also make it available in some of the other languages that are spoken throughout the district. It's just, it would start with those 2 languages.
Great. That feels like a really important identified need that we're building the capacity to address that, but currently, right now, it was identified as a need. That's a real place for growth for us. That's a great outcome to understand.
Can you remind me moving forward, after you have this communication and connection, are we then going to continue to work with some of our other families that maybe are a little harder to reach, so we have a good connection with them as well? Or what's kind of the plan there? Like, I'm sure this is probably our first big gap, right, is to getting to those who don't primarily speak English, but you guys are identifying other areas where we have gaps of connecting with families?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the opportunity we get to participate in this 5-year program, because the organization that is coming in to lead the work is working in conjunction with the Department of Education and the Colorado Education Initiative. And, they come with some real expertise, but we are gonna really build some infrastructure with goals and objectives that we're gonna make sure that we meet. And it's gonna be fun to be able to work with other districts across the state that are doing the same work. We schedule convenings and get together throughout the year to learn more from each other. We're doing a whole co-creating model. It's really fun. Our next one is actually, we're hosting it here in Grand Junction in May. So it's really gonna be great. It'll help our multilingual families. It'll help all of our families. And really the idea is that we really make family partnership, like I said in the intro, it really has to be a key ingredient. If we're gonna reach those goals in our strategic plan, we need to be able to support our staff, because I don't think historically we've done an excellent job supporting staff, figuring out how to work with families. There's gonna be a lot of recommendations that come out of it, but it's exciting work, and we're definitely gonna focus on supporting all families.
Well, and isn't one of the organizations tied to that, like the National Parent Teacher organization? So there's a lot of partners that are a part of this, and that's, Tracy mentioned that roadmap, or maybe it was Estrella that mentioned it. The roadmap is, a lot of it is, it's almost like a strategic plan, but for family partnerships. So I think there'll be a lot of pieces that get pulled in on how do you partner with families in general. But because of the strategic plan goal around reaching families who speak a different language than English, that's why there's such a emphasis on it in this presentation, but it'll be a larger roadmap.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of our first biggest gaps, is we've got to connect with our families, that do not speak English primarily. But I also think of maybe some of the socioeconomic challenges we have with other families, where we need to try to work and connect with them and help them, and, and then it kind of so on and so forth. So, no, I think this is great work. I think having the families involved only helps the student, and it definitely helps our staff and our teachers, and just gets everybody engaged and on the same page moving forward. I think that's excellent.
And just to clarify too, the voice visits, home visits, we haven't, whatever we decide, it's for, right? It will be for all of our families. So it's not just our multilingual families, it's all of our families. So that's, our focus is the district in general, all the families that we serve.
Wonderful, thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Carrie. No.
Okay. I was just gonna say, I just realized what I always need processes to understand, like to make sure that I'm doing what I need to be doing. And I was just thinking that I feel like this relates back to what I was wondering about your part of the strategic plan, in terms of like there's an audit, right? They did, like, this is much more developed than community partnership, right? There's science behind this, there's groups that have done it, there's all this organization. What you guys are doing is so innovative with community partnerships. And I wonder if there's any lessons learned in terms of like conducting an audit and coming up with a roadmap and a strategic plan to, you know, borrowing from other fields. I don't want to tell you how to do your thing, but I was just trying to figure out how to think about identifying gaps. And as they're saying, like, this is how we're going to identify gaps. And I wonder if there's any crossover between those. I really like and appreciate the process.
Well, and unless you're going to talk about the roadmap, but my understanding is the roadmap, we're actually going to be utilizing an outside partner that's done this in other districts to come in and help co-create that with us. So, yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to say real quickly, they are humbly professional, and I absolutely admire the two of these. And you talk about the partnerships that they have and the opportunities that they're creating for our families. Neither one of them spoke about the fact that they just presented the very first class for our adults, for our family members, for our parents to come in and learn English as well. And they are now in the process of also setting up classes for our teachers and adults that are English speakers to come in and learn Spanish, just to continue to bridge those gaps with our families. And they don't talk about some of the things that they do, but that is a huge thing to be one of the school districts, to be able to provide classes for our parents to come in and learn English, that are so excited to be able to have that opportunity. And I think that's remarkable.
Thanks, Carrie. You know, our goal is to be the best, have the model family partnership program in the state. And so I think we have the capability to do it. We have I gathered that we have the community support and we have the leadership to do it. And so I'm excited about the work.
So I'll just, unless there's other questions. So one, I know we joke about the website a lot, as I do too, but Carrie does a really good job with taking a tool that maybe isn't the greatest tool and doing the best we can with it. So I do appreciate the comms team for that. And I just want to mention, again, thanking the folks that came from outside the district tonight, but also thanks to Tracy for spearheading this focus area team. So appreciate that. And I just want to point out, as I'm listening to this, like this is not normal, I would say, for districts. Not to say that there aren't other districts that take a strategic plan and actually put it into action, but a lot of times they live on shelves and we don't do anything with it. So, I would say this is not normal. I also just want to thank the board for the support that they're providing us in this and giving us a little grace as we figure out how to take a strategic plan, and actually operationalize it, knowing that we're going to have to change some things along the way and make adjustments. And then just back to Alex's model that he showed us that one time. Remember, we're beginning of the year, we're in inputs. Right now, we're in outputs. And then when the groups come back at the end of the year, we'll talk more about outcomes. But I think you're seeing some of the groups are already hitting some of those outcomes at this point in the year. So, and it is a 3-year strategic plan, but I think a lot of great work's gone into it already. So I appreciate everybody who's been working on this.
Yes, well done.
So that concludes our presentation this evening. We thank you for your engagement and excellent questions for us to consider as we continue to work on implementing the strategic plan. We hope that you're as excited as we are about the progress we've made so far. We know that there's a long way to go to create the necessary trust and confidence with our community and family partners so they feel encouraged and empowered to invest their time, energy, and passion into supporting our learners. But I feel confident that the dedicated individuals on our implementation teams are committed to accomplishing this challenge, and I'm proud of the work that they've put in so far. Thanks.
Well done, thank you. And thank you all for staying and for your time this evening. We really appreciate that. Good job, Tracy. You're leading a good team.
I'm lucky.
All righty. Next up, we have Mesa Valley Community School application review. I'm going to grab some water real quick while they come up.
She has the little thing in her, and then you don't have to flip it around. You don't have to. It just makes it so much easier. Red is on.
Red is on.
All righty. Take it away.
Hello again. And lucky you, I'm here for the next one too. I'm here all night.
Yeah.
Here all night.
So are we.
Perfect. Oh, good. All right.
She like has a book with a binding on it of all the
these are
presentations.
all
She
my
really is here all night long.
Night.
Jen's just really organized.
I try. Yes, I try. Thank you, Cassie, if you're looking or watching. All right, Dan, take it away.
All right. Well, we're here again, and as many groups have come in tonight, they've handed you some tasks that you are responsible for working on, and unfortunately, we are going to hand you a task tonight too, so you have more to work on in the next couple weeks. So, anyways,
But we've done a lot of the work.
we have, and hopefully we've done a thorough enough job with these 2 reviews, actually, that it will make it much easier on you over the next couple weeks. So I just want to thank all of you for the opportunity to share the new application review for Mesa Valley Community School and the renewal process for Independence Academy Charter School. Really just to quickly explain the reasoning behind the new application request for Mesa Valley Community School. As you guys know, Mesa Valley Community School has been a part of our community and has been a district charter since 2014, but their history goes even farther into the 2000s when they were a contract school or contract program. So they've been around for quite a while. We did require them this year, instead of going through the renewal process, to go through a new application process. As many of you remember, last spring, CDE had reached out and had really come in and taken a look at how Mesa Valley Community School was programming in their current charter, and they deemed their K-5 program was not going to be allowable as it was structured at the time. So some significant changes had to be made. They've gone through really quite a bit over this last year, and then to be able to come forward as they have with their new application, and that was part of why we asked for a new application. We knew if we went through a renewal that we weren't going to or possibly couldn't see all the pieces to the new restructuring of their plan. So we're here tonight to present that restructure as they presented to us. And then really the difference between a new application and a renewal. We have been lucky enough this year to get a brand new application in the fall and go through obviously this new application with Mesa Valley Community School and a renewal with Independence Academy at the same time. So hang on to your seats. We've got lots of good stuff for you. And we're going to go ahead and start as a 2-part with Mesa Valley Community School application, and then we'll move into the data regarding Independence Academy. So as you can see, our outcome tonight really is to present you, the board, the timeline of the review process as we started, turn over all the review materials, the data, the rubrics, and the findings from our review, and to answer any questions in order to help you make that decision here in the next couple weeks. The next slide really shows you the timeline. Really, we did follow this timeline for both charter schools, but this one in particular is Mesa Valley Community School because it was a new application. So both schools were required to turn their intent to apply on December 1st or by December 1st. So both, in particular, Mesa Valley Community School and Independence Academy turned their charters in or their intent to apply on time. So in December, they turned in the new applications. The application was distributed to all the board members. If you remember, you all got those nice thick binders to review at your leisure. And so you've been doing that since the December 1st application turn-in. The admin team, and if you remember, the admin team is made up of senior leaders within the school district, started to do their sectional review of the criteria rubric in December. We move into January, and the admin team continued reviewing the application This is where district accountability, if you remember on our fall review, the District Accountability Committee plays a part in that, and they started their review on their preferred sectional areas. That process back in January went very well. A team of folks on district accountability that had gone through it once before, and it really, the efficiency of that team and how they dove into that work really was impressive. We were able to turn that around in one session and not 2 sessions of DAC as we did earlier this fall. Once again, in a new application, we go through what's called a capacity interview, in which you guys have the transcripts of that capacity interview, the video, the questions, and so we were able to, as an admin team, sit and ask some pretty poignant questions to Mesa Valley Community School and their members. And then something that was a little bit different, we conducted 2 site visits, one at each school during this time, and so members of our admin team, some had never been into our charter schools, or at least Independence Academy and Mesa Valley Community, and so that was a pretty enlightening experience for our members to be able to go in, look at building structure, programming, and also to be able to ask questions of staff and students and also those principals. So. We moved into February, where we're at right now. We have had in the last 2 weeks are required by policy our Board of Education community meetings, which just happened about a week ago. We had one last Wednesday here, and then we also had a community coffee and fruta at Shellady on Saturday morning. So we've gone through that piece of the process. The admin team has completed their review of not just Mesa Valley Community School, but we've also completed the review with Independence Academy. The Mesa Valley Community School application review and materials presented to the board tonight, and then you have full access and will have and continue to have full access to all those materials and all the data that we've turned over to you after tonight. And then, of course, you'll make your final decision here in 2 weeks. But you have that opportunity along that 2 weeks to reach out to the admin team for questions. You also have the ability to reach out to those individual schools if you have questions as well, okay? All right, the rubric, the criteria rubric, once again, we're using a rubric to score that is a collaborative rubric put together by the Colorado Charter School Institute, the Colorado League of Charter Schools, and CDE. So it is a real best practice aligned rubric, and that is why we've adopted that, and we've used it in now all 3 of our reviews this year. You can see the criteria rubric as stated. Really, we are shooting as a district. Obviously, we'd love to see our applications come in that are completely fully developed and all their ratings show at a developed mark, but you can see that's a pretty high bar, and mostly developed is really kind of where we shoot for, right? It's at, if we can get in the mostly developed area within those reviews, then we're in a pretty good spot. And then we've got partially developed and then not developed, okay? So let me just jump into our District Accountability Committee as they reviewed Mesa Valley Community School. These are the areas of the rubric or the application that they review, which is exactly the areas that they had jumped into in an earlier review. So each pairing and how we grouped ourselves in the DAC review really, they were real familiar with that process. They were familiar with the section that they were going to review, and I believe that's what helped in the efficiency of this particular review. Okay. So here are the results of the DAC review ratings. So evidence of support, they rated this at fully developed. And if you remember, this is Mesa Valley Community School, a program that's been in existence for a while. So I think that played a lot into it, knowing that at least the 612 model has been very successful, and here's the addition of a new restructured K-5 model. The enrollment policy was solid, got a fully developed rating. Parent and community engagement was high at a mostly developed. Their waiver process, fully developed. Discipline, expulsion, suspension, mostly developed, and their dispute resolution process was fully developed. So overall, the DAC reviews were very high. The admin team reviewed, and as you remember, the admin team goes a little bit deeper into some of those heavy hitter parts of the application, really what are called the deal breakers by the state of Colorado. And so these areas really have to have a fine-tooth comb gone through. And so the members of our senior leadership that are on the admin team really share the workload within their departments sometimes, so they can share the parts of the application to multiple people within their department to do the review. So these are the key areas, the real heavy hitter areas on the Mesa Valley Community School Review. And here comes the results from that in our next slide. So you can see, as we reviewed educational programs, pupil performance, we've got mostly developed around programming. We've got fully developed in the pupil performance. Serving students with special needs, mostly developed. Governance, fully developed. The employee section, mostly developed. Evidence of support, they have a huge number of supports out in the community, and they have waiting lists to get into their programs. So they are really a fully developed and have a ton of evidence of support. Budget and finance is really good. Mel went through that, obviously, as she does with a fine-tooth comb, and to pull a fully developed rating out of that means you've really got your ships in order, right? So facilities and operations, facilities.
Act together.
Yeah, well, yeah. Facilities and operations. Hey, it's been a long night, right? So, all right. Facilitations and operations, Clint and his team did the review there, fully developed, school management contracts fully developed. So overall, between DAC and the admin team, you can see some pretty good data and some pretty good developed programming coming out of Mesa Valley Community School. Okay? So any questions in regarding this new application process with Mesa Valley Community School? And we can answer those now, and then we'll jump into the renewal of Independence Academy.
So thank you for doing that. The ratings for both the DAC and from admin, are those before or after the interviews?
So the DAC did their review prior to the capacity interview, so they were about a week ahead.
Okay.
So we were able to obviously develop questions, and if you remember, and I'll refresh you, any questions that come out of the review can land on, or out of the rubric can land on the capacity interview. So we actually did, and we're able to pull questions from the DAC review part of it and put it into the capacity interview. So I know 2 for sure made it out of. They didn't have a lot of concerning questions or questions that came out of DAC, but we did have a couple that landed in the capacity interview. And then, of course, as an admin team, we go through, and if there are more things that we need or some clarifiers, that really makes up the basis of the capacity interview.
And so I would say with the admin team, I had questions before that I was prepared to ask at the capacity interview. And then when we did the tour, I asked some of the questions there. I actually let them know, here are some of the things that I need to know more about. So when you look at the video, one of the things I really wanted them to articulate during the capacity interview is what was the difference between now and then with programming. And they were able, and I said, so be prepared, because I wanted a thoughtful response and ensuring. I read it in the manual or the book or the application that they gave us, but we wanted to hear them articulate it. So I would say I didn't give them all the questions, obviously, for the capacity interview, but my responses definitely changed the more we had the opportunity to engage with them.
And does the rating that we can see reflect before or after the interview? After, okay. And then when you did the walk around with them, was there anything in there that you learned that wasn't captured in the interview? You know, like, would we miss anything? Does that make sense?
I really tried, we might want to ask Mel, but I don't know if she would have, if there were any additional information that she asked. I really wanted to make sure if there was anything that I didn't see or didn't read. I did ask them during that. I don't think there was anything.
Okay. I just want to make sure we don't miss-
explicit or transparent or obvious.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that like there's not something that you ask the question of, got the answer, I feel great about, but then we don't get to see that, you know?
No.
Okay, great. So it sounds minor. No, nothing. Mel says no.
Mel says no. Yeah.
Excellent.
You know, when it comes to the money, when you have your Ship's in order. It's really important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would just say I'm glad you
He's
guys.
the admiral.
I'm glad you guys did the walkthrough. I love that. I would just make sure that on the walkthrough, there's no, like, anything you guys learn in the walkthrough, we get captured somewhere.
Sure.
Just for
Sure. There were some definite special education questions, and Tammy and I walked through together. And so, just for clarity, it was written in their application, but we got to then see the actual the classrooms, and then what does that continuum of services look like?
And that really is the point of the walkthroughs. It is a part of a review process that really should happen every year as we go in. Even on a 5-year contract with a charter school or a 3-year contract, there should be and will from this point forward, we will take part in those site visits where not only the admin team, but any of you that would like to go along just to see, does programming, does the facilities, does the school that we see on paper line up with what we see in person? I think I garnered a lot, obviously, but I think Clint really, as a facilities manager and as someone who needs to know construction projects and needs to know how things have been expanded over the years within both these two schools, Clint was able to really get a good idea. And he asked a lot of questions just about, safety and code and all those things, because right now Mesa Valley Community School is still in some remodeling because they're having to, with the restructure of programming, they've had to change some of their physical structures within their building. So as authorizers, we have access. You have access to these district charters anytime that you would like to go in and take a look. So I think that's something that I know all 3 of our charter schools are really starting to find an interest in, is we're more visible and we're around and we're more thorough, obviously, in what we're doing and how we're going through this process.
Can I ask two more really quick questions? One, I think that's a good idea. I feel like a board member should be, just even if it's one board member, should be on those tours. But just put that in my to-do list for later. And then did Tim, as we're talking about safety and building safety, did Tim Leon go on that?
No, but those are the questions that Clint definitely asked, so.
Okay.
And I actually, in the capacity interview, I know that's been something that you guys have asked for in the past 3 or 4 months, is are our district charter schools participating with safety and security? Our safety security team, are they participating fully? So that was a question you'll hear in the capacity interview that was not a question that was on it, but I thought it would be good for you and the community here that Mesa Valley Community School has always and will continue to partner with our district safety and security team, and they will participate in all the drills. They participate in all facets just like any of other schools do, and they're pretty proud of that partnership that they have with us. So
great. Thanks.
Was that it?
I'm just encouraged to hear that from the district level that I mean, so to speak, that we're kind of stepping up to uphold our end of the bargain with charter schools. And I think getting in and looking at those buildings will only help us get out in front of situations or just give more help to our charters. And so I think, Dan, I love hearing your plan moving forward with our charters. So I've actually visited all of them. I mean, obviously, I'm in Mesa Valley already, so, but that one, I think it's a great idea for us to just go in and review and let them know that we're there to help support them and partner with them too, so. Well done.
But also just specifically during the renewal tour. Yeah.
Absolutely, and as we grow into, and I had mentioned, I think back in the fall, we do have some work to do on our charter school policy and regulation. So there's some red line work to be done on it here this spring, but now that we're through these renewals and reviews, I think that's the work that's ahead of us. But I think absolutely as we grow into those site visits, it would be great to have one of you or a couple of you along each and every time that we go in, just to see, because they are ours and they do belong to us, and it would be good for them. Feedback is always good, and I think they were craving a lot of feedback. Like oftentimes when you don't get feedback, you don't know, you kind of flounder a little bit, and right now they've all been really open to the feedback we've been able to
It
get.
helps us to do those tours with you guys. I mean, we've gone out and visited a lot of the schools, but we're not looking for the same things that you guys know to look for. So I think it would be pretty enlightening to be able to ride along with that and start to identify and see the things that you see.
Absolutely. Okay, we're gonna, this should go a little bit quicker just because it was a renewal of Independence Charter Academy, or Academy Charter School. Board policy and regulation, LBDR states the renewal application must contain at a minimum a complete report on the progress of the school in achieving the goals, objectives, student performance standards, content standards, and other terms of the initial application. It also must include a financial statement that discloses the cost of operation of the charter school. We as a district authorizer have the ability to ask for more additional information needed regarding the application review. We did ask for more information and detail regarding students with special needs and educational programming. So in regulation, there are certain things at a minimum that we have to ask during the renewal. It's not as robust as an initial application, and I think you'll see that as we go through the ratings. There's not as much there, but we use the same rubric, and we go in and we try to review each and every section just as we would as a new application. Once again, we use the same criteria rubric. At this point, DAC is not a part of a renewal. It's not part of our regulation to have DAC involved. So it's just the admin review team. And so, as I mentioned, the regulation states, and so we looked at educational programs, which was an add. That was something that we felt like we needed to look a little deeper into as Jen was going through the pupil performance section. And then serving students with special needs. That will always be an area that we will need to continue to robustly go in and look at because it's such a multifaceted area with students with special, our special population areas. So we've got to make sure there's a lot of legal pieces that go with that and legality, and so we want to make sure we're in good standing there. We look at governance, we look at legal contractual compliance, and we look at financial performance, okay? So as you can see here, here are their rubric ratings that we were able to go through and find educational programs mostly developed, evaluating pupil performance mostly developed, serving students with special needs. We had some questions. We had to go back for some clarifications over the last few days just to make sure that we are fully matching up with what is stated in a contract and in a negotiation around that, making sure that the services and the legal obligations are being met there. So that was one that was scrutinized heavily by our team, but it's important that we do that. But it ended up being mostly developed, governance fully developed, legal and contractual compliance mostly developed, and financial performance mostly developed. So Independence Academy, as we hand it over to you, favored well in their ratings as well. So any questions around Independence Academy?
So with these mostly developed areas, do they come up with a plan to get them back to fully developed, or how do you hear about it?
You know, if you remember, mostly developed was green. That's at a minimum of where we want. I would definitely say, specifically with serving students with special needs and the educational programs, I think that we had some healthy conversation going on, and I would expect fully developed soon. Yes, but they definitely have, with the feedback that they have now received, they most certainly can move forward in making some adjustments or ensuring they're meeting, when it comes to students with special needs, ensuring that they're meeting those legal obligations.
So Jen, do we look at that more frequently or just wait until they're up for renewal before we look at those things?
I think that's part of some change that we're kind of enacting now, and that is in statute, we are to go in and really check on performance, check on those things on a yearly basis, not on a full review basis,
Right.
but not just wait 3 to 5 years before you are checking on some of these things. So I think that's certainly a change in some of our process and structure that we're doing now. And like I said, it's welcome. So we'll be able to go in. If we had concerns that were mostly developed right now, we can certainly work together side by side, try to support them to a point where we feel like, and we as authorizers get the ability to set that bar to say, hey, we need you there in 1 year, we need you there in 2 years. When you come back for renewal, we want to make sure that we're at a higher level than we were.
It just seems that with we're this school's been around for a while, that mostly developed to have so many things that are just mostly developed and only one that's fully developed seems a little bit odd to me. And I know that's a minimum requirement.
Yeah,
But
and
it
I can
seems like
share a
we
little
should get
bit
them
why
higher.
mostly developed with serving students with special needs.
Mm.
There are, let's say, there are 5 categories. So it's not just our students on IEPs. It's 504s, our students, English language learners, homeless, economically disadvantaged. They don't have. And this is why I'd be mostly developed, they don't have students identified as ELL, so they don't have a full plan. However, they said, while we don't have any, if we would, this is what we would do, and of course, we would always consult with the school district. So that's why I did not feel comfortable in giving them mostly developed when they would have some that were just partially developed, because they don't have necessarily those students that they need to serve at
So
that time.
that particular section makes complete sense.
Mhm.
But like educational programs
Mhm.
or evaluating pupil performance, those seem like those could be.
So
sort of
evaluating pupil performance, they don't have high, not all of they have a high number of opt-outs for their testing. And so how do you really fully evaluate your pupil performance if you don't have full participation? But they have a plan. They have a plan on how they're trying to encourage and promote testing.
Okay, good, thank you.
And I don't know if, are
It
we?
just clears that up a little bit more.
Yeah, so when you leave and you've gone over this with them, so you identify those areas of concern or somewhat of concern, and then they're going to submit a plan on how they're dealing with that, right?
They submit a plan
you just
or
make 'em
further
aware of-
explanation, yeah.
You make them aware of why you can't.
Yes, why they wouldn't go fully developed, correct.
They say, well, we've got this in place just.
So currently, they haven't seen the results of the rubrics yet until tonight. This is the first time that either school has been able to see what we rated them as we pass that on to you. They will get the full rubrics with all the explanations within strengths, concerns, questions. They'll get access to that, but that's after you guys have made your final decision, in a couple weeks. So if there's areas of concern, it's stated in there. And then obviously, as a facilitator between the charters and the district, I'll be able to sit down with them and we can do some one-on-one feedback meetings too. Just remember, and I explained this Saturday at the coffee, charters are important, district charters are important for us because it's another option for our families. These are schools that choose to do the how differently than we in District 51 do the how, right? But they still have to meet the same standards. So how they get there is completely up to them, but they are held to the same standards, the same ratings, the school performance frameworks, all that, and their performance is no different than anybody or any school in Colorado. It's the how, right? And that's what makes a charter an option for families in the particular delivery of their materials. So sometimes the programming, when we look at programming, yeah, it's very different than what we traditionally look at in programming. But we also want to make sure that the state puts out guidance on selected programs, things like that.
And
Yeah.
I just got a reminder from one of our staff members that's watching from home, I guess. Just a reminder that charters are part of our district performance framework as well. So we have to make sure that they're performing well, because if they're not, they ding us as a district just like any other of our traditional public schools would do as well.
Can I ask, Dan, did you say that they don't get to see the detailed rubric until after we make a decision?
So the feedback that our team has put together now, obviously, if there's questions that come up between now and the final decision, we're going to reach out to them and we're going to ask them questions if we need more information. But as far as the overall feedback of the application, that's not part of what they receive until after a resolution's been made either to accept or to deny.
But I would think they have some pretty good idea of when we are asking follow-up questions, where they will probably land.
I wonder So can you just walk me through why we decided that timeline? Because as I'm thinking about it, I mean, I know this is our internal process, but as I'm thinking about it, you know, if I have a question, you know, like these exact questions, right, that just happened, would it be beneficial for us in making decisions to have them have access to all the information so they can say, okay, here's what we're doing about these things, instead of us having to reach out and be like, what are you doing about this? What are you doing about this? What are you doing about this? What are you doing about this?
I would say that's really the role of what we do and how we run that process. Obviously, you have access, you will have access to the full rubric, not just the summary of the rubric, but you will have full access to the questions that we ask. I think that's what you do. You entrust us to develop the questions, or if we have concerns, go back, try to find answers that will suffice what we're looking for, and put a body of evidence forward for you to be able to go, hey, this, you know, as I go through the rubric, or, you know, Doug looks at the rubric, or any of you look at that rubric, you should be able to glean, you know, how did things end up the way they did at this point. We're providing feedback, excuse me, on a regular basis throughout this whole process, right? So they are getting, you know, if we reach out for more, or there's a specific question that comes up and we need it, we're able to open that line of communication and say that is an area that we just need more of it. We get real specific about it, and if it comes in at satisfactory, then that's where we go to that rubric and say, yep, they've met that, and here's the particular rating for it. So I feel like, and obviously you guys, we're growing into this process, and we're learning more each and every time we do it. We can certainly look at what that feedback cycle looks like, and how it fits in and when it fits in, because it sounds like that might be a piece of
And if there's a specific thing that a board member has a question about and is a concern, and you don't feel like you can make a decision until you have it, then definitely we want to know that so we can go back and touch base with the school about it. We want to make sure you have everything you need to make the decision.
I understand that, thank you. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, I wonder if it makes more sense if these are all, you know, this is not about either of these specific schools. This is just our process.
In general.
Yeah, so if we're saying, okay, well, these are not fully developed things, would it not make sense to hand that back to them and say, these are all the things that aren't fully developed, what are you doing about all of these things? So instead of just saying like, I have this question, I have this question, I have this question, would it make sense to say like, here are all of the things that are not fully developed, and what's your response to all of them?
I would say this, and we just started it in the fall. We're really designing the application process around the rubric, so they have the rubric up front, and they design the application to follow lockstep the success criteria rubric. I agree with you in that it would be good to go back with, and I think that's certainly what we try to do leading up to tonight, is we try to, you know, push on that success criteria rubric to say, and I would say this, you know, the green at mostly develop is acceptable at this point. I think down the road, if it's not going to be acceptable, then that's something that we can certainly, you know, move forward with, to say it will take mostly developed, you know, in these particular areas of the rubric, with, you know, mostly developed in these particular areas. We can certainly do that. I just feel like we do reach out and really pull apart if we need to pull apart. If something's missing, we try in our questions to push them into that mostly developed or fully developed area, right? So.
And I want to acknowledge Dan. I'm up here truly as that support. I'm certainly was a member on the admin team, just like so many other people that are on the senior leadership. But what Dan has done with this process, this is not their first renewal or application, but it's really the first time they've gone through a process like this. And because of this, because he's been so thoughtful, ensuring that we've got our DAC input, ensuring that we're using the rubric that the state that collaboration, that's new to them as well. So I think at the next renewal, they will be able to answer, they know what we're gonna ask. They're going to be more prepared and hopefully won't have to do the back and forth like we've had to do. And we're gonna have to change some board policy now that we've gone through and have really lived the renewal and that application. The renewal application process and the initial application process. It was really interesting going through Independence Academy because it was a renewal, but Mesa Valley was an initial, but they had already right? So that they were kind of a hybrid. It's new, but they're not new. So Wildflower was brand new. They hadn't been in here. They didn't have data to look at. It merely was when you're evaluating pupil performance, we had to take what they said on a page. Yeah, Independence Academy and Mesa Community, we could look and see they had data.
I wonder if after we approve a school, I wonder if it'd be worth having a little interview with them about, what about this process worked? What would
I think that's great.
streamline?
Mesa Valley, I believe Mesa Valley's here.
Yeah.
You might be nodding
Looking
right
at
now.
them.
So.
But I think that might be really important feedback. As we're all learning together, I'd be curious what would have helped you,
Be more prepared or be able to answer.
or just streamline it. I think the process is I'm so impressed with what you guys have put together and how you've done this, and I know we can keep improving it, and I wonder what those ways are.
Yeah, I would like feedback before reviewing or redoing board policy, because I want it to be mutually beneficial for the district and for charters coming in. I'm just really encouraged to hear that we're gonna be checking in more often, because I think we can then run interference on schools that might be dropping towards turnaround, because obviously we know that when charters have to go through turnaround, it's different than our other schools. And so I think if we can be there as support and help them through that process, I think this just makes us a better partner with them as well. And again, like it says, it all comes back on the review of the district too, because they are our schools. So well done. You guys have done a lot of really good work. And so, yeah, maybe if you can figure out a way to get some feedback after this process from Independence and Mesa Valley. And I know Mesa Valley is a fluke because they were an established school, but their charter changed enough that we had to have them do a reapplication process. I don't know if we'll ever see that again. I mean, maybe, but it's been a good process to learn through. And garner
It was still a new application
Right.
process. So
Yes.
even though it's a wild situation, it's a unique situation. Just because they offer such a unique service, I think we can still get the new application feedback from.
Absolutely, yeah, and we never know. I mean, if the state changes something, that eventually could change another charter as well with their programming, or so not to say that it would never happen again, but I think it's been a good learning process. So, well done. Thank you guys. This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, no, I'm staying.
I think Jen, you stay up here.
You never get to leave.
Yikes.
Yes. Up next, we have the K-12 early release update.
I'm glad that my ships are fading. I'm glad we started at 5, right? It would be 9 if we
were here at 4.
6. You guys were here at 4.
Thank you all for coming and staying. We appreciate your participation. I know Mesa Valley's in the back, so. Which I guess I also probably should let the public know, I have to recuse myself from the vote on Mesa Valley because my daughter attends school there. I can obviously vote on the renewal for Independence, and I'll make that reminder again in 2 weeks, so. And I have not attended any of the DAC meetings or been influencing in any way, although I do love the school.
And you all do need to go if you haven't had the opportunity to visit each one of those. And I will tell you, Dr. Hill has been to each one of them, and they were very, they love, it's good attention. They love the attention that they have been receiving this year from the district, from Dan supporting them as a site director, Dr. Hill, other board members going out and visiting them, and then we went out as a team to visit each one of the sites. It was great. It was really good. Okay. It's not the last, but we're getting.
Board member.
He said, he said just keep going.
The timer didn't apply to the other group. I just feel a little.
I don't think the timer applied to anybody tonight, so.
So why start with MedVed? All right, we were with you guys about 2 meetings ago, a couple weeks, 4 weeks ago, and talking about that concept of early release. At our last meeting, we said that we needed to get some additional data. We have gathered that data, and we're going to share that data with you. So much of the front, just real quick, a reminder of why, or that rationale and urgency for that 6/12 early release, that deeper ongoing focus on student academic and social emotional success, especially in our achievement gap groups. Staff ongoing and in-depth collaboration, providing that opportunity for time during the school day for those teams to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all students, of course, but certainly looking at our struggling or striving students. That opportunity for robust learning opportunities and business and community connections, which you heard a lot about this, I was gonna say this afternoon, this evening, with our focus area number 3. How can we bolster those during the day? And our most viable way to ensure that MTSS, our multi-tiered of supports, is actually happening throughout and during throughout the week and throughout the year and during the day. So we just wanted to remind you real quick, I don't think this is something that we talked about. What is MTSS and what are the components, or we call them the pillars of MTSS? And these are the 5 pillars as defined by CDE, and this is what our MTSS group focuses on. So that time to ensure that team shared driven shared leadership, that family and school and community partnerships, database problem solving and decision making, comprehensive screening and assessment, and the layered continuum of supports. Again, we begin with the end in mind, our D51 graduate profile, and our strategic areas that, of course, we would want to focus on during that time. Let's get. Why don't you want to start? You want to talk about the must-haves, because I know you've really been focusing on this.
So we met with our leaders about 2 weeks ago. I don't know if that one's working. About 2 weeks ago, and just reiterated the must-haves, which are this is not in place of the learning community work that's already underway. Some of those groups, especially singletons, can't have that in absence of this time. We need to have an explicit focus on those multi-tiered systems of support. So that's kind of what's tight. We are going to really let control of this to each school to design it, but it's what we would call defined autonomy. So we've got to have MTSS in that. If there is learning community time, it's outcomes-based and guided, and that we have a recurring cadence so we can get really good at something. This shouldn't change and, hey, have this week off and let's try something new each time. We want to really get good at focusing in on those kids that aren't being successful or extending the kids that are. And so next slide, here are the action steps we took with leaders. Primarily, we sent out a survey to engage our community. We'll look at those results briefly. We got our leaders' feedback on that because many of them had already talked with their school accountability committees. We did a prep time for them to prepare to engage their school accountability committees to talk about the full plan. And then we started to have leaders say, how close are you to your early release? There was a decision made that gifted and talented and our multilingual learners, we do need to pull them. It was about half the leaders saying they wanted people pulled, half said they wanted them at their site, but we did make a decision that 1 time per month we would pull GT teachers across the district, say on like a first Friday, as the same with multilingual, and that's because they're shared across schools, okay? And we also began conversations with operations, primarily transportation, working with Clint and his team, and then athletics as well with Paul Kane. So the survey that went out, we had pretty strong response rate in 8 days. We got 1,115 responses. There was an FAQ in there that gave a pretty decent rationale. It was over a page long, kind of gave our explanation for what we're going to do and especially how we're not going to waste this time. I think that was a theme. We'll look at themes here. And so the next slide, let's see the results. Pretty even distribution across grade levels. 12th grade was the least. That makes sense. They're kind of on their way out. But representation across schools was also pretty balanced as well. 68% responded favorably at a 4 or a 5, which was
To what degree do you support early release, staff professional learning, and student support collaboration? And that was strongly support or support. 3 is kind of your neutral category. So with your neutrals, we're at 77%, favorable and neutral. We are going to share this feedback after tonight with each school leader, so they have their school community's feedback. Next slide. So here's some of the trends. I want to take a minute to preview those. This was what do you value? And so these were comments in favor of. These were all people that have students in the system, right? You couldn't just be a staff member. Many of those parents probably were staff members, though. Teacher collaboration and professional learning time was number 1. Came up student support and problem solving, vertical teaming that they can't do, especially in our smaller schools. LCT time, it was cool to see people actually say, I want to design reteaches. You heard that over and over again. And then just staff communication, time to meet as a staff and connect. It did support our unified curriculum, and then alignment with the elementary schedule. Families noted that that was a benefit. There were some themes that we didn't plan for, and these aren't really part of our strategy, but some parents did note that students are kind of fried on a Friday, time to do homework, kids could get part-time jobs. Student and mental health, kind of a start to the weekend. That came up. Athletics actually came up as this could help with athletics. And Paul has provided data about number of coaches and when folks leave at high school. Middle school does not have athletics on Fridays, but high school does. Here's some of the concern comments. They're kind of organized into themes. Top theme was just loss of instructional minutes.
Sorry.
Relationship to in-service days, there was kind of a concept around, we already have in-service days, why do we want to do this as well? We have 5 of those at middle school during the year and 3 at high school. A big concern was, are folks going to be accountable for this time? Are we actually going to use it, or is it just going to turn into not efficient well-used time? Childcare and parent work schedules were expressed as a concern. Student and staff absences on Fridays. Is there after-school programming? Can parents have access to office hours? And then we better have transportation. Those were kind of some big concern themes. And we unpacked those here as we consider our district plan. That first one is big. Well, we're losing instructional minutes. And the big idea here is that learning community focus of going from what was taught or what was covered. I need more days to cover more content, to really focusing on what did students learn. We need dedicated venues for teachers to collaborate. It can't just happen when you squeeze it in 40 minutes a week. We are over the CDE requirement for days and time. We will say that we're kind of meagerly over it. There's districts that are probably 2 to 3 weeks more, but those districts also often have that time for this work as well. Relationship to in-service days, those days are infrequent. So when we talk about the intended purposes, those days are kind of infrequent. They're great benchmark moments to come together, and those would align with early release, but they're not as frequent as we might want. Accountability, that is central to our plan, and we want to actually call it oversight and support. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Transportation, Mr. Garcia has been working on that, and we have come a long way with that. We need a 50-minute split on that. And then between elementary and secondary schools. And then parent work and after-school care, we will engage community partners on that. So some of the presentations earlier. And then absences, we have talked with HR there that we would need some policy and procedure to ensure that if there is a trend and a pattern, folks can be addressed, and HR says that that policy does exist. And then lastly, a desire for parent office hours that would fit within the MTSS focus. Okay, so those are kind of some of the considerations. We can come back to those. So here's our next steps. It really is getting into the weeds of transportation and bell schedules, as well as nutrition. School plans, equipping our leadership teams to really do this. If we say, yes, we're doing it, then they've got a big lift to start getting planned for to make the most of that time. As far as intentional support and oversight, we have actually talked about our whole district instructional leadership team being out and present during these times, say on a Friday afternoon, and observing it in schools, giving feedback. And then student services, we do need to really reorient to some state and federal requirements for special education. We also have an Office of Civil Rights guidance that we need to follow. And then communication, what will this mean to all of our stakeholder groups? Okay. And our timeline, we're actually right on track. We just wrapped that up in January, so we're updated now. And should we move forward for an August implementation, it's really how do we get organized as district leadership and school leaders. And so the work groups that are pivotal right now are in blue right there, some of our policies, procedure, and operations, and then some of our minutes, state, federal, and our association, making sure we align there. So then with that, two last things, just so you all know, our leaders have engaged with their school accountability committees on those ideas, kind of what is the picture, what's that ongoing cadence, how are they communicating. They need to talk with their whole staffs on that. That was something we got feedback as, you know, how are teachers having a voice in shaping this, and that is at each school level. And then beginning to bring this to a concrete concept would be our next step. And that should be as clear as something like this. What are we going to do with that hour and 45 minutes? And how is it recurring? It should be application-based. We should be talking about supporting specific students who aren't getting it, who are, and backwards planning with that focus in mind. And it should fit with our district in-service and PL focus. It should complement each other. So with that, that is a very fast update. I wish the clock was going. I think that was like 9.5 minutes. Okay. I'm impressed with it. I messed up names. I apologize. Kind of tired here. Questions? Duly noted.
I have a couple of questions. Okay, so I'm really curious. You noted that we're really lean on meeting our state requirements. Can you talk about that really quickly?
So, do you want to talk?
Do you remember the number of minutes?
It's 100, it's 1,080.
1,000, yeah.
56 if you have professional learning in their in-service days.
Okay.
So 1,080, it's 1,056 with professional learning.
Okay.
Built in intentionally.
So there's an acknowledgement that professional learning time directly benefits students.
Absolutely.
State level.
And so they have discounted the instructional requirements because they think the quality, because we know the quality of the instruction is better. I am concerned, so, you know, we all know Colorado has the fewest days of all of the states at 160. Most states have 180 instructional days per year. Do we have like you know how we looked at the budget relative to performance of students? Do we have like a days in school relative to performance? Yeah, with other districts in Colorado, with other states.
So if you remember, Danny did pull that data and talked about how many districts have early release and how are they using that time. We didn't add in how many days they have in their calendar.
Because we in Mesa County have like many less days than a lot of other schools. So that doesn't answer that question for me.
I think what's valuable to think about is this is that shift, the learning community shift of what was taught to what was learned, right? And you can actually, if you'll be intentional, meet learners where they're at. Think if you had your own private tutor, you're going to cover more ground with less exposures. We want more days, and I think that's the work of us with talking about mills. And it was kind of abysmal to see that we were the least funded, right? And those mills buy days. But it was also, when I think about our district focus on learning communities and aligned professional learning the last 3 years, and we've seen that uptick that's counter to districts that don't couple as clearly. So if you give us days and we had the early release in the professional learning, home run, I think it's pretty critical that we have this time to make the most of it.
Yeah.
So students don't lose ground.
It seems like it's it seems to me like it must be paired, yeah.
And it's a really good question, and it is a concern that we heard through the survey and talking to folks. So yeah, I think it is a bigger question or conversation for the board as we move forward to looking at re-upping on that 2017 mill. At some point, it was 5 days enough. Should we be going back to because essentially it just comes down to paying teachers for those extra days, which does end up meaning that their salaries go up because you're paying them for more days, and then we get a benefit of more days with kids in the school. So it's a good conversation to have. I would agree having both would be awesome. As a I'm thinking back to when I was a teacher, we didn't have early release built in. And so to do the work that you're talking about doing, if you had that, and it's not a half day, it's a couple hours on a Friday, to have that built into your week, to be able to do that planning with your team versus what we had to do, which was stay after school for 2 or 3 hours and plan because you don't have enough time during the day. There's a lot of benefit if you can structure it in the right way and actually make sure it's not wasted time, to actually have an impact on students. But yeah, if we could have both, and have that conversation about, does the community value having more instructional days for our kids, then that's something I think we need to bring back to them.
We were having that conversation last year, I think around, our contract negotiations and such, that why are we so many fewer days than a lot of other districts in Colorado, but certainly then Colorado is low. So is there a way we can get some data on that where we can see what kind of outcomes, how the outcomes are affected by the number of days or not that the students are?
I think we can get some data and determine, is it, causation, correlation, but yes, I do believe we can get that data.
That would be helpful for me. I love the idea of the early, sorry, Doug.
No.
I love the idea of the early release, and I'm on board with how it benefits the students and the staff. But I'm also concerned about enough instructional time for the students.
Just in that vein, and again, if I'm wrong with this, someone correct me, but when we added the 5 days in 17, they were to make up for the days that were lost due to the recession. So it wasn't we were adding anything more than we were trying to get them back. So when you look ahead, and if I remember, one of the statistics we use is that our kids, by the time, if they've gone through our system K-12, they've missed, because of the comparison to other districts that we're comparing ourselves to in terms of their calendar and how many days they have, when you add it all together, which may or may not be the best way to look at it, but we were 1 year behind of instruction. Am I right with that?
Cumulatively.
Cumulative, yeah.
Cumulatively.
And
I'm not sure if it was, I don't know those exact dates,
Yeah,
but
but
I'm
it
definitely
sent a
aware of
message
those.
we're not only behind because we lost those days due to the recession as we did other things, but to your point and Carrie's point is to make these gains in the staff development and training, you need those contact days as well. It shouldn't be one or the other. It should be, in our community can do that. We just have to make that case so they understand that, which they did in 17. Pardon me?
And and make it part of the same argument. As a parent, I think it is a hard sell to say we're taking this instructional time out. It's valuable and it contributes. I think it just makes sense to be like, and we're just exchanging this time. It's quality time. We're doing great work, and we're providing more instruction, more quality instruction. It just seems like an easier link to me. But I understand like the funding is different, and the context is the same, but the mechanisms are totally different. But to me, it just seems like we have to find a way to link them.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I wish we could solve both of them right now. The charge we gave Dr. Medved and his team was, within the given days that we have, would this be a benefit to the system, to our students? And if so, is that something that we want to pursue? So yeah, I completely agree. I wish we could solve both right now and say, go back right now and say, do we value more days of school or days in school for our families and students? So right now they've just been charged with what can you do within the days we have, and is this worth us exploring and actually moving forward with as a district? And then, yeah, I think we do need to come back to the community and say, and.
I wonder if this feels, to me, this feels really pressing. I mean, how do we improve outcomes and achievement by doing more professional learning and creating more instructional time?
Building that collective efficacy is really, and we believe the growth that we have seen in the work that we have done is with our building leadership, those instructional teams. And here's an opportunity during the week that these teams can meet. Yeah, and what would happen if we had more days in our calendar instructional time for our students.
How many more days would we want or need?
I'd like to see the data first
everybody
before we would even look at that. I'd like to see what those other schools are doing and what their outcomes are, how that correlates, and then we can have a better idea. I mean, it might be 5 days, maybe it's more than that. I don't know. You'd have to see where the breakover point was in the outcomes.
I mean, at the end of the day, if the board is serious about this, then a mill levy has to go on the ballot by the fall.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking urgency, then
It's the only way.
this is, I mean, it's a big ask. I mean, I know you guys are already busy, but, you know, I mean, who's not right now? But I just think that, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, I like that the early release will coincide with our elementary schools already, so I know that that helps support families. I'm encouraged to see the data. Angela and I popped into, was it? Yeah.
The school leadership
Yeah.
team's meeting at.
Yeah, so that was great, and just kind of did a informal survey, but as we heard them present on their struggles, is they don't have the time. And so what I think we're doing is by, like what Dr. Hill said when he was a teacher, is we're burning our teachers out by having them have to stay more time after school. You know, they have families, they have things they need to do, but they know that they've got to do that time, you know, with other teachers, and to work on those things. And so, yeah, I think this is at least a good step in the right direction. And then I think as a board, we need to see if there's an ask we have for our community as far as instructional days.
I find it interesting that like 42 of the states have a 180-day requirement, so 20 more days. I wonder if there's science behind that. I would imagine that there is, right?
I would, yes.
Well, if you guys would be able to get the board, or Dr. Hill, could you see if the board could get some data on that? And then, I guess then we'd have to assess what we think would be a reasonable ask, because then we have to put dollars to those days.
Yeah, I was gonna say that we could also look at how much those states fund public education
Yeah.
too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I understand. I know that
There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, but I think these are questions. I think this is a great opportunity to ask these questions and to think about what we want to look like and how we would do that.
I would say as we get ready to make a decision, and whatever level that decision's made at, the timing is kind of ideal. You've observed our leadership teams are poised, they're ready to lead out at that next step. We've been able to fund that capacity building through grants over the last several years. The resource cliffs that we saw earlier do kind of impact this. So one of the keys in all of this has been the role of the instructional coach. They've played kind of a glue role in this to build the capacity of their peers, to be a bridge from teachers to administrators. And unfortunately, about half of our coaches right now are funded through grants. So we have one last year with coaches to be a part of helping lift this work. And build capacity of those leadership teams. And so kind of being able to spin this up and get that muscle memory built for our school teams next year, while we are a little more resource rich, would go a long way, I think, in making it be effective for years to come. So kind of from a more strategy point of view, like the time is probably right to act on implementing.
So will we have some numbers on what we're gonna need to retain coaches? Or are you working with Melanie on that, or so that the board can understand what that also looks like? You know, if we don't have the funding for that, what are we losing, or what is the funding needed to keep that?
Absolutely.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Work on that as well.
We have a big spreadsheet. We have lots of spreadsheets, but there's one just for those.
Does the board have any other questions?
Thank you for your work.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Great information. All right.
I'm at the end of my.
Yeah.
Stay there.
That's
policy.
They're not my policies, are they?
No, I don't think so.
They're not. I had nothing to do with these policies. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jen. All right, so the board has just two policies for our work session tonight. This is just the first reading for the board to get familiar with them, and then we'll vote on them on the 21st. The school board meetings, we just changed some of the language here because, as you recollect, our first meeting in January was while everyone was still on break. It was January 3rd. Because of the way our policy read, it didn't give us some flexibility to move that meeting. We have flexibility to move other meetings, like when it gets closer to Christmas time. But that was kind of a little inconvenient for our staff. Some were obviously still taking some days off. So this change in this policy is just changing some of that wording for the board to have some flexibility in our scheduling. And then the other one is the recruitment and appointment of the superintendent. Again, not much, actually. Oh, a CASB update. Okay, thank you. That's what I thought it was. So that's pretty much it. And then for board open discussion, could you guys just briefly share from the community meetings from Mesa Valley, just generally what kind of feedback you got from those community meetings, just so all the board members can hear what was shared at those meetings?
Yeah, at ours, it was the board coffee on Saturday, and it was great. We had Mesa Valley Community School there, and then we had Dan there. And yeah, they just kind of laid out the situation and the timeline and the history, and people were really supportive. And I think for a lot of the folks there, they hadn't heard much about Mesa Valley Community School, so I think it was an opportunity for them to learn, and they seemed interested. And we didn't really get any, it was just a nice conversation that was supportive. That's it.
I think for Angela and I met here, and there's a lot of support for them, and very little, we offered scenarios, and we wanted to hear some negative stuff as well, but there wasn't really anything negative, how they overcome issues and complaints, but the majority of it was just how close of a knit family they are, and how, their kids have increased, and how they wouldn't change it for the world. So there was a lot of support for them.
And lots of parents that just sang their praises about what a great option it was for their kids, and probably keeps kids in school rather than dropping out or doing something else. So it's really such a different model, and it really addresses some needs of a lot of kids in our community, and it's growing. So that was very good to hear.
Great. All right, is there anything the board has else to discuss this evening?
For me, really, just the importance of, we talk about parent involvement, and it's very positive to know that we've had the surveys and the other things, but just to employ people to really get involved, because it's kind of like the analogy when you're a kid. If mom asks you what's for dinner and you don't say anything, you can't complain when dinner's on the table. So, it's one of those things that we just really employ people to get involved and give us your input, whether it be, surveys or coffees or anything like that, because your opinions do matter, your voices matter. So we just ask that you get involved with it.
Very good.
Just follow up with the strategic plan when Dr. Hill mentioned earlier. As a person who worked in the district for many years and had more than one strategic plan rolled out that subsequently ended up, I don't even know where they ended up at, to be honest with you. They were meaningless to me as a teacher, to me as a principal, to many others. And it's when you listen to the presentations, not just tonight, but the ones we've had, really show a focus, an alignment of where we're trying to get to, and the work that it takes to get there, and the leadership that makes that happen. And it starts, I give Dr. Hill tremendous credit, and Dr. Circo before, about starting that process and having something and being upfront at the very beginning that there are going to be things that are not completed, or we've tried this and it didn't work. Just that for lack of another word, that transparency, that we're really working, using the resources we have, using the talent we have, for the ultimate thing of what are we doing that's helping our kids be successful and our staff and our parents. So I really commend you, Brian, for your great work on that. And you've put together a tremendous team and I know you're still looking for an assistant superintendent, which I know we need as well, to help with this work. So good job to you and your team, I think.
Tammy's
That
Tammy's gonna say thanks.
That was all for Tammy.
We've lost her.
Did I say that correctly? I
Tammy didn't have to
Dr.
talk
Hill, I
tonight,
meant.
so.
Tammy,
Yeah, we meant.
Sorry about that. Don't ding me on that.
Yes, I know. She's like, and
I
we're
should
done.
know better.
Well, thank you all. I know it's like really significant stuff. I feel like every time we look at the agendas, we try to keep them as streamlined as possible, but this is a lot of important work for all of us to do. And I mean, all of the things we heard tonight are really important. They mean things to different people in our communities. They mean something to the whole as the district community. So we appreciate really the time that you guys give to these to prepare for them and then to stick around afterwards to take all of our questions and to present to the community. I think I've been getting a lot of good feedback from the community that they feel like they have a better grasp of what's going on with the district and what we're doing and what we're moving forward with. So I think it's been really good. Go ahead.
So I want to thank Andrea Christensen and the D51 Foundation. The White Ice event was awesome. It was a great thing to go to. So we had a lot of fun, a lot of dancing, a lot of nice outfits, a lot of good shoes. Fine. But it was a blast. So, but I'm looking forward to next year. So good job, and that was great. And thanks for witnessing it.
I was just gonna mention, since we've switched to 5, I haven't had any complaints from anybody. Are y'all good with keeping these at 5 o'clock?
I've heard positive feedback about it. Not just a couple comments, but.
I think the only, yeah,
Yeah, if we could just get it below 5
5 hours, I know. I just only had one concern when I think it came to public comment, but I cleared that up because I told them that they didn't have to be here right at 5 in order to sign up for public comment. I think that was, some people were worried that they wouldn't be able to get off work and come. And I said, it'll probably be 7 o'clock by the time we get to public comment. So, they had plenty of time to still get here. And I think that answered their question. So, I mean, the good thing is you can start streaming it and listening to it if you're out, and then you could get here. And we still let people obviously sign up for public comment up until that time, so.
I have had a lot of feedback about people being annoyed at how long our meetings are and how they want to be more engaged and but they just can't because the meetings are so long. I don't know what to say about that, but that's the only other feedback I've got.
Yeah, the reason we did we started the coffees back up was so that it gave people another opportunity to do it in a smaller environment and not surrounded by all the presentations and all the other business and work that we have to get done during those meetings. So, and in all honesty, community, we would really love to have more participation in our coffees. They tend to be smaller than they were last year. And although we don't have maybe some of the more exciting topics going on, it's still important that people come out to those so that we can continue to do them.
I wonder, I have not thought of this until right now. I wonder if it would be worth, it's probably not. As I'm saying those
We'd
words
have
out
to
loud,
have
it sounds
two
like a
work,
bad
we'd
idea.
have to have 2 work sessions, I think, to make some of these shorter.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we could limit public comment to 30 minutes, so to encourage people to come to our board comment.
I
don't think public
come for the
comments are an
comment.
issue.
It's
to
just
drive
sitting through all of the.
Yeah, I agree.
If we could, I mean, if we want to do public comment first, which
Yeah.
we've had problems
We
with.
do it earlier,
I'm just
so
saying, there's
people
just, for
need to go.
people to stay for sometimes the presentations are lengthy.
Yeah.
To sit, all of our staff's over there going, Oh, yeah, they're lengthy. So the ones that they have to present. And so that's what makes the meetings really so long, the public comment. Even when we've had a full house, we haven't gone over an hour.
Yeah.
Maybe we just need to meet every week.
We need meetings, daily,
Tech's ready to go.
daily meetings.
Daily.
Yeah.
If the concerns you're hearing are from folks that want to comment, but they don't want to sit through the meeting, then that is a conversation we've had before of, I guess, what does the board, and you don't have to answer, this is a rhetorical question, but does the board value having folks come in, say something and leave and not be a part of the process? Or do we want folks to see, because ideally, they may have stuff they want to comment on from the presentation. So I think we had that discussion. We thought it'd probably be better that we get through our work and our business and the reports, then you can allow for comment, but you have to have the comment before you take a vote on something. The other option is, and again, we don't have to decide this now, but if the board wants to change up how public comment is done, I mean, there's other districts that have moved towards having a call line that you call into and you record your public comment and it's more accessible to people, and then we provide the audio for the board and they can listen to it later.
I want to see the whites of their eyes.
Okay.
I want to see people.
Well, or we can
And I want them to be able to see us. I mean, I want to be face to face with our community. And that's, for me, that's the whole reason for public comment, is for people to be able to present to the board in person. I don't want to take that away from our
You could
community.
also do it somewhat like city council does, where once a certain topic is presented, then there's only public comment only on that topic at that time, and then they reserve time at the end for anything that's not on the agenda. So, again, I do agree with Dr. Hill, though. For instance, the night that we did the presentation on the Orchard Mesa pool, one of the Orchard Mesa pool,
Employees.
no, yeah, employees, but that wants to save the pool, came up afterwards and said they were ready to, come and give us an earful. And then once they heard the presentation and they had a better understanding of it, I mean, they still commented, but I think it gave some, obviously, information and history of where all of this had come from. And so I think it just helped them, obviously, in their feedback and in their understanding. So, these are our meetings, and we do, I do value public comment, but these are the meetings for the board for us to work through the information. So I know they're long for everybody, and every time that Dr. Hill and Bridget and Will and I sit down for agenda setting, we are literally racking our brains to try to figure out how to make these more streamlined. But even just looking at the information tonight, some of these, we've tried to move some of them we can't move because we have to get some decisions. Now, granted, some of these things we won't be looking at probably on next year's agenda, but I mean, I'm always open for the conversation, but I think we just have a lot of stuff before us that our meetings are just kind of lengthy for now. I think it will ebb and flow. But I hear the same thing, Dr. Schultes, is that the meetings are long. I also think that we're kind of we're just in a different climate for a lot of things, coming out of COVID, having to do a lot of things with our students and ESSER funds and finances.
Also have still a board that's only in it 1 year, a new superintendent, a lot of new senior leadership, a new strategic plan.
We're getting a lot of stuff done.
We're getting a lot of stuff done.
Yeah.
I think that also comes with, when we talk at the beginning of our public comment, we say if you have something different to say, say it, but if you're going to say the same thing, you can maybe ditto and then go on to it. But we have an abundance of people that say the same exact thing, and they make sure they say it, which is fine because I know they need to be heard. But that's a lot of the issue that I see is when you have 60 or 30 to 35 people that want a public comment at 3 minutes each, and then 30 people are saying the same exact thing, that kind of adds to the, so I mean, just if we can figure out an indifferent, because they do need to be heard, but at the same point, if you're going to say the same thing that you said, it kind of makes it kind of.
Well, that it seems to me that the last time we had public comment, people were pretty good about that, and many people didn't use their 3 minutes.
Yeah, we got
They-
done.
They did say,
done in an
you know,
hour,
yes, I agree, and here are my 2 additional points or whatever, because we thought we were going to be well over an hour, and we were under an
Under an
hour,
hour.
so.
I mean,
And
I
they-
read all,
they d-
I read all the feedback that comes in via email.
I don't think the problem is the 1 hour, once a month of public comment. It's that it's the other.
We have just so much
There's just, our
content we've
agenda's
gotta get
so
through.
full that really I don't think the problem is public comment. I think the problem is that with the public having to spend so much time because we've got so much other work to do, and
Well, I would say
fix
go
that.
home from work, have dinner,
and then come.
get your
yeah.
comfy clothes on, and then come to the board meeting and comment about 7 o'clock.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know how else to, I mean, that's just, I
that's
think
the
that's about
reality.
when we've been hitting it. And then, you know, and we see people here, look, there's people here that have sat the whole time, and they are taking the time to be here, and so, hey, I wish our meetings could be shorter as well, but I don't know how we could get through it without.
can't.
Because like, you asked everybody asked really great questions, and I think that is our job. Our job as a board is to drill down. The community's wondering these questions. I feel like we're doing our due diligence, and so I think that's just the nature of the work that we're doing, and, you know,
Well, Mark that we just spent 15 minutes talking
discussing about how long the meetings are.
Yeah, and you know
How
what?
long the meetings are.
And I just want to take another 15 minutes to just like sit here more. But,
And that was my fault, because I asked, the question I asked was, is everybody good with 5 o'clock? And then it turned into this, so.
So we're
you.
thinking about it. We hear you, and we can't do anything. Come to our board coffees.
Yeah, good job.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, good night, everyone.
Do we need to adjourn?
No, it's just a work session.
Oh, right.
We adjourned earlier, the business meeting, yeah.